Live, we're going live. And we're live. Hello, folks. Aha, everything's working. There we go. There's Telios the West saying, woo woot. Been waiting all week for this. Glad to see you're feeling well enough to spoil us. Thank you, Babs. And there's Joseph Smith saying, hello, Joseph. How you doing? Thank you very much, folks, for joining me. Yeah, sorry, I haven't been too well over the last week. Yeah. Just not the best. And I'm still not quite 100%, but I'm good enough to do this tonight. And we had the work done, I suppose, which means I've got to dig it out. And I suppose a wee bit of housekeeping. I will be away next week as I'm having a wee bit of a break, taking a wee holiday. And then we'll be back again the week after. I suppose we've hit December, haven't we? So let me see. So the next episode will hopefully be on the 15th of December. And then we'll just, that's our only break, really. And then we'll just keep pushing. And it'll take us into the new year, just about. And that will take us to the end of the book. So we're not too far to go. And things are sort of starting to liven up. And yeah, get a bit intense in the book. The tension is building. Let me just get to where we are. Sorry, folks. A wee bit unorganized tonight because I've been running around like a headless chicken. I've been thinking a bit about, I suppose one of the things I've been thinking about a wee bit about is taking my PhD and trying to turn it into an ebook. What's the whole videos basically, and try and put some images and stuff in it, and make it available for people to buy, basically. Not too expensive. I'm thinking like a $5 or something. And I've been one of the things I've been trying to think about is if I could illustrate it, what would I do? Because obviously I can't afford to pay illustrators or anything. And I've been thinking about we doodles like this of worms. I don't know. I've been having a wee muck around with worm doodling, I suppose, and trying to develop some way of I don't know, creating little sort of interspatial doodles for the book if possible. But I'm going to get working at that in the new year, I think, and I'll try and create an audio version for Audible as well, I think. So yeah, there we go. Doodles are plenty within this one. Chapter 40 is an interesting one, I think. That's where we're at today. And there's Chaya Rivka saying shalom all. Shalom Chaya, thank you very much for joining us. And there's Joseph saying hi Chaya and Talios. Again, apologies for being away last week, just not too well. I basically had some very dodgy food, and I think I had a touch of food poisoning at the end, just sort of carried on for a couple of days. So bear with me a wee second. I get my wee, there we are, paperweight, which we're having to use now. Again, the book is, the book's not doing well, folks, at all. We've got a full split, and it's one of those ones we do have to bend it a wee bit to read, don't we? It's just that, I don't know, it's the lack of, what would you call it? Is it guttering? Something like that in the book. I think that's probably not the right term. Let's just put that there. I think this is it's a pretty interesting chapter. Right, let me get that to stay there and that to stay there. There we go. And I'll grab a pen. And that's me good to go. I think this is one of the chapters where Herbert does a very good job of giving us a sense of what it must be like to be Paul Atreides and to experience, how do we put it, future memories as memories in the present, if that makes sense. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Just even to explain. Life happens, Doc, says Joseph. It does. And in general, I'm not someone who gets food poisoning too often, I think. So there we go. There's Bojack Harkness saying hi all. Hi Bojack, thank you for joining us. Hope you're keeping well, folks, by the way. No, it's just a little bit of, and then a funny tummy for a few days. And one of those ones where, I basically had the runs quite bad. And hence I didn't want to do a show in case I literally had to run, But as life happens indeed. My wife and myself were just having a very deep discussion about life, and Yeah, I was getting quite heavy, but we're just talking about how much I suppose we like our lives. I think, but they're a bit tricky at the minute, you know. But I think that's the case for many people. Hmm. So our opening epigraph here. Let's have a wee look at it. Epigraph number 40. There is in all things a pattern that is part of our universe. It has symmetry, elegance, and grace. Those qualities you find always in that which the true artist captures. You can find it in the turning of the seasons, in the way sand trails along a ridge, in the branch clusters of the creosote bush, or the pattern of its leaves. We try to copy these patterns in our lives and our society, seeking the rhythms, the dances, the forms that comfort. Yet it is possible to see peril in the finding of ultimate perfection. It is clear that the ultimate pattern contains its own fixity. In such perfection, all things move towards death. Now, that's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? And yeah, it is interesting, I suppose, that fixity is, I suppose, in terms of how this relates to Paul, I think that's the key word there. But backing up a wee bit, I suppose, let's have a look at it. There is in all things a pattern that is part of our universe. I fully agree with this. I used to be obsessed with symmetry up until up until the point where I kind of heavily got into asymmetry, and to the degree that the number of tattoos on my body are symmetrical. If I had one on this shoulder, I had to have one on this shoulder. Um, but yeah, patterns in nature, patterns in the universe, they're all over the place, and particularly mathematical patterns. And a good one to look at is, for example, the golden ratio. Um, and within that, for example, you can see that particular pattern in all sorts of things, from things like Romanesque broccoli to my dog's belly, interestingly enough, to all sorts of things. You'll see even how things like how people like within Greek culture, for example, this pattern was used to build the Parthenon. So there are mathematical patterns within nature. And as much the comment here, the qualities you find always in that which the true artist captures. So again, things like these, you'll also see the same pattern um, in things like the Mona Lisa, and as I said, buildings like the Parthenon. And it's a very this is a good point that Herbert makes, I suppose. Um, hmm. But there's also asymmetry as well. That's what I would say. Those qualities you find in that which the true artist captures. So you can find it in, and he gives us a very much, I suppose, Dune orientated kind of discussion on where we can find these things. The turning of the seasons, maybe a bit more metaphorical, I suppose, maybe mathematical. The way sand trails along a ridge, in branch clusters of the creosote bush, or the pattern of its leaves. We try to copy these patterns in our lives and society. Again, this is true. Seeking the rhythms, the dances, the forms that comfort. Um, Yet it is possible to see peril in the finding of ultimate perfection. It is clear that the ultimate pattern contains its own fixity. In such perfection, all things move towards death. Now, the last wee bit, I don't know what you guys think about this. Peril in the finding of ultimate perfection. I might be one of those people that would say that it's almost impossible to produce perfection. Um, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist myself, and it's long ago I learned to accept that no matter what I do within my work, it'll never be quite the way I want it. There'll be external influences on it. There'll be my own. There'll be all sorts of constraints. And this would work with my PhD and, for example, other things that I've done, not at all the way I want it. And not that I would like to hand in a piece of perfect work, if you see what I mean. It would please me enormously to go, there you go, that's absolutely everything it needs to be, and it is a self-contained thing. It is in itself perfect, and it's just not possible. And And in fact, understanding that, it's not something that I would ever seek to achieve in any shape or form. And I don't know if anybody would agree with me on that, but I think it's not possible to do something perfectly, or to be perfect, if you see what I mean. So it's within that, the ultimate pattern contains its own fixity, and it's an interesting term. So it's not mutable. In such things, all things move towards death. So I suppose stagnation, isn't it, in a way, I think, is what we're talking about there, that the ultimate pattern contains its own fixity, something that's not mutable. And part of me was actually thinking about, how would I put it, the kind of Darwinian and Lamarckian, is that the term? Lamarckism, soft inheritance, these kind of things that are in Dune. I don't know why, but that kind of that evolutionary discussion that came to this, possibly because of the word fixity, I may be focusing on that, but it reminded me a little bit about that. So there's quite a bit of meaning in that, I suppose. But patterns within nature, the true artist will seek to imitate these, won't they? This kind of thing, we can find them all over the place. We try to copy these patterns in our lives as human beings. Why? Because they offer some sort of comfort. And is it a wonder that we seek patterns? Do we seek things that are that have something familiar and repetitive about them? That's much more comfortable to us as a species, maybe, than as just something that's quite chaotic and random. I don't know. I'm quite fond of chaos and the random as well. So, well, there we go. So we'll see how that works with this. I suppose for Paul, I think within this chapter, the fixity of his self in the now is the thing that's confusing about this chapter. Essentially, before we go pile into it, what we've got is that we're going to see Paul in a dream state. And the tricky thing for us as the reader here, as we go into this chapter, it's one of the reasons why I think it's a really interesting chapter, and I think it can be slightly difficult, is that we're not going to be too sure as we read, if we're taking it as a fresh read, what's going on, what has happened. Are these things in the past, or have they yet to occur? Are they part of something that's happened? In other words, are they in a historical past? Or is Paul remembering these things as a prescient memory, that he's seen this in a dream? Are these things yet to happen, basically? And I suppose that these questions within this book for the reader and for Paul, and that's what I think about what's interesting about the way Herbert writes this, are focused on where is the now, if you see what I mean. That's what I get from it. And once you get that, then we'll get a bit of a shift within the chapter, and we'll move back into, I suppose, the reality of the now, if you like. But there's quite a wee bit in this. And so the chapter has kind of, to me, two very different senses to it. One is kind of giving us an experience of, in a way, what it's like for Paul prior to this trial that he must face. And then the second part of this chapter really moves again into the essence of ritual and power with the Fremen, and the reasons for him doing this. And of course, the tension that Herbert builds here is going to be, I think, is very good. And it works really well. And of course, this is all about Paul going to becoming a Sandrider. And before he can truly lead the Fremen, he must become a Sandrider. And we'll get through this chapter even, and it won't have happened yet. Which is again, I think, is part of Herbert's charm, the way he handles events, and in particular, the way he deals with tension. So there's an awful lot going on here. I just thought I'd just quickly give you a wee bit of a sense of what's ahead, because it's quite dense. And yeah, Fremen ritual and custom come into this as well, a fair bit. There's Telios saying, howdy dog, evening y'all. Oh, you must have said howdy before the program started, Babs. Hiya, Babs, how you doing? Antonio saying, howdy, Bojack. Excuse me. So there we go. So let's get tearing into the chapter. And oh, by the way, folks, I know a whole bunch of you sent me wee comments saying I hope you're getting better and stuff. And as always, I will catch up with the correspondence and give you a personal reply. I've even got I think a bit of a lengthy message from someone that has to have a look at. So just because I wasn't too well, I really kind of just tried to get a wee bit of bed rest, etc. So I haven't been on top of things, but I will catch up with all your correspondence. And thank you all very much for your best wishes and kind words. Just thought I'd get that in there before we got started. Okay, so let's see. Number 2, where are we? Right, there we go. So Paul remembered that he had a meal, and I suppose, interestingly, food's going to be a bit of an anchor here. And I've drawn a wee anchor next to this. That's what we're going to mention it here, but we'll get to this later on when we come back to the meal, I suppose, with Chani. Paul remembered a meal that was heavy with spice essence. And so for Paul, that means a bit of a trip, basically. Usually he clung to the memory because it was an anchor point. He could tell himself from this vantage point that his immediate experience must be a dream. So we're dreaming. And I am a theater of, here we go, this is the language. I am a theater of processes. I am prey to the imperfect vision, to the race consciousness and its terrible purpose. So that's a pretty full-on statement. Now, let's take a wee look. Theater of processes. I think that's kind of interesting. Let me just have a wee quick look here. Bring up a definition of the word process. I suppose my point of view is computing, isn't it? In an instance of a program being executed in a multitasking operating system, typically running in an environment that protects it from other processes. However, the definition we want here is a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular end. So that's what Paul is. He's a theater of processes. And again, processes are very important to systems and systemic thinking. To the race consciousness and to its terrible purpose. So race consciousness, terrible purpose, race consciousness, sorry. And I suppose in terms of the epigraph that we've just had about perfection, in such perfection, all things move towards death. Paul's problem is that this is an imperfect vision, and he is prey to it, which suggests it's predatory upon him, if that makes sense. So Paul's fear here, he could not escape the fear that he'd somehow overrun himself, lost his position in time, so that past, future, and present mingled without distinction, a kind of visual fatigue. And it's often described as a kind of visual thing for Paul, isn't it? I think the last time it was a bit like a montage where he could pull out different individual frames of images. So a kind of visual fatigue. And it came from the necessity of holding the prescient future, so the events that he sees from the future, as a kind of memory. And that was itself a thing that's intrinsically of the past. So this is his problem, and we're going to experience a wee bit of this here. So whenever he sees something in the future, he's seen that as part of his, I suppose, his, how would we put it, just his future sight, if you like, for want of a better term. He has an event from a prescient future. Once he's seen it, it forms a memory, basically. And doing that makes that future memory, if this makes sense, a thing of the past, because it's now occurred. The memory has occurred at the very least, even though the event may not have. And of course we've been told by Paul, and we understand that some things don't occur. There are possible futures. Not everything goes the way that he sees it. It's this imperfect vision, and we're going to get, I suppose this chapter is going to end with that point as well. And here we get this meal thing again. Chani prepared the meal for me. So he's focusing on the meal, remember, because it's his anchor point in time. It's the thing that makes him understand that he's dreaming as well. So this is Paul dreaming. And yet, I suppose we have a full stream of consciousness here and asking questions, etc. And here we go. Here's the first one of these things. Yet Chani was deep in the south, in the cold country where the sun was hot, secreted in one of the new Sietch strongholds, safe with their son, Leto II. Aha! So I suppose we've had a bit of a mention, I think, prior to this. We definitely know about Alia. And I suppose the question, at this point, so has Leto II been born? This is the kind of thing we're getting here. He immediately follows it. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Or was that a thing yet to happen? So there we go. Let me see. I've put yes here, but I think I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure I'm wrong. Hang on. Bear with me a wee second. It's Alia he holds as well. Yes. So was that a thing yet to happen? The answer is no. That has happened. Sorry, I must have scribbled that down before I found out. I work in a wee bit of a linear fashion here, and I should have doubled back there. So then we have no, and of course he says no. He reassured himself. It's not a thing yet to happen. For Alia the Strange One, his sister had gone there with his mother and with Chani. A 20-thumper trip into the south, riding a Reverend Mother's palanquin, fixed to the back of a wild maker, of a wild worm. So Paul's doubt here surfaces. I suppose he shied away from the thought of riding the giant worm. Wonder why that is. And again, another question. Or is it Alia yet to be born? And again, of course, we don't know. That's not the case. So we're getting events, and they haven't really occurred for us, have they? And we've heard mention of these characters. Are they alive? Are they real? Do they exist at this point? Or has Alia been born? Has Leto II been born, etc., etc.? And it's, I suppose, the amount of time that's passed here as well. So Paul's recollections. I was on Razia, and we're told that in the terminology of the Imperium, that's a semi-piratical guerrilla raid. We went raiding to recover the water of our dead in Arrakis, and I found the remains of my father in the funeral pyre. I enshrined the skull of my father in a Fremen rock overlooking Hard Pass. Or was that a thing yet to be? And I wasn't too sure about that one, to be honest with you. But again, I think it's happened. If anyone's got another opinion on these, let me know, by the way. It's a tricky one, this. But again, Paul's reasoning here, but my wounds are real. My scars are real. Therefore, the shrine of my father's skull is real. So we're going to have to go, is that a thing yet to be? No, that's also a thing that's happened. So still in his dreamlike state, Paul remembered that Hera, Jamas's wife, intruded on him once to say that there had been a fight in the Sietch corridor, had been in the interim Sietch before the women and children had been sent into the deep south. Hera had stood in the entrance to the inner chamber, the black wings of her hair tied back on by water rings on a chain. And again, a little bit of Fremen culture here. She held aside Chambers' hangings and told him that Chani had just killed someone. And Paul, that happened. That was real, not born out of its time and subject to change. So I've got a wee skull here for the death of a Fremen challenger. So Paul remembers this event. So all of these events have happened to him. and that they are confusing a bit for us, I suppose, aren't they? And it helps to flesh out a little bit of what's happened in the interim. It's almost like a little montage in itself. So Paul remembers that he rushed out to find Chani standing beneath yellow globes of the corridor, clad in a brilliant blue wraparound robe with the hood thrown back. The flush of exertion on her, once again, elfin features. Every time we see Chani, she has elfin features. She'd been sheathing her crysknife, and a huddled group had been hurrying down the corridor with a burden. And Paul remembers telling himself, "You always know when they're carrying a body." Sorry, and he said a burden body there. Pardon me. And of course, I think that's before, isn't it? Whenever Jamas's body, I think, is this somebody carrying away with a burden, isn't it? Something like that. You always know when they're carrying a body. And so we have a description of Chani here. Her water rings, worn openly in Sietch on a cord around her neck, tinkled as she turned toward him. And Paul, this is the way this conversation goes. Paul says, "Chani, what is this? I dispatched one who came to challenge you in single combat, Usul." "You killed him," says Paul. "Yes, but perhaps I should have left him for Hurrah." And of course, Paul recalls, again, we're remembering this, how the faces around them showed the appreciation for these words. And even Hurrah had laughed. So a bit of Fremen humour here. And I think it's quite, but he came to challenge me. And I get the sense in the book that Paul's a wee bit petulant here. Me is the way we have that me emphasized in the text. It's italicized, isn't it? Chani says, let's see, hang on. I think I've missed a line here. Oh no, here we go. You trained me yourself in the weirding way, Usul. Certainly, but you shouldn't. I was born in the desert, Usul. I know how to use a crysknife. And we're told Paul suppressed his anger. I've got that nice big red here, anger. And he tried to talk reasonably. This may all be true, Chani, but... And he's cut off by Chani, who says, "I am no longer a child hunting scorpions in the Sietch by the light of a hand globe, Usul. I do not play games." And Paul glares, the old glared at, isn't it? So people stared and glared in this book, glared at her, caught by the odd ferocity beneath her casual attitude. I quite like that. "He was not worthy, Usul. I not disturb your meditations with the likes of him." So Paul's a wee bit angry that he hasn't got to kill this person himself, I suppose, or more likely he's angry that Chani's doing this for him. I suppose there's a little bit of we've seen a wee bit of the separation of men and women in Fremen society, haven't we? It's mentioned previously within this chapter. We've been told that, for example, Chani was deep in the south, etc. Where are we? They'd gone there with his mother and with Chani. And I think, sorry, something else, but we pretty much have the women are in the south, while the we've maybe not got there yet, but while the Harkonnen pogrom is still going on. There we go. Have been in the interim. When we're talking about this, it's the interim siege before the women and children have been sent into the deep south. So, of course, I think they're pretty much of similar age, Paul and Chani, aren't they? They're very similar in some ways. But she treats it as I'm not a child. And what I wanted to point out, I suppose, she says he was not worthy, Usul. I'd not disturb your meditations with the likes of him. Now, Chani is Paul's partner in that sense. But if we look at her here, what we've got here is part of the messianic pattern in Chani, if you see what I mean. So things develop around whenever the idea that Herbert would suggest is that whenever we have a messiah or a superhero or a hero who's above and beyond what mortal normal people are to the population, as much as that person has an impact upon society, what the real problem is what people do around that individual in their name, if you see what I mean. And ultimately that's what the real problem is with the messianic impulse. So to me, he's not worthy, disturbing your meditations. And of course, she's a priestess, isn't she? She's a Sayadina. So I just thought I'd mention that. I think that's part of the messianic pattern here. She moved, so she's basically, yeah, this person was going to come and challenge him. Maybe they could have chatted about it, you know. Maybe Paul could have convinced him without violence, though that's not the Fremen way, I'd imagine. But the decision has been taken from him. And I think that's why he's angry here. But Chani's responding as more as I don't get it. It's not that I'm a woman. It's certainly not presented that way. It's that I'm no longer a child. And it's that she's determined his worthiness. So she follows this up with, so he was not worthy, Usul. I'd not disturb your meditations with the likes of him. And beloved, when it's learned that a challenger may face me and be brought to shameful death by Muad'Dib's woman, there'll be fewer challengers. And I put down next to that strategy. And interestingly enough, I think that's Chani. How would we put it? Thinking a lot like the, I suppose, Jessica and the Atreides in a funny way. There's a strategy behind it. And I don't know. I suppose there's something about this that's I kind of find it a wee bit interesting. I'm not quite sure what to make of it because shameful death by Muad'Dib's woman. What's the problem with that? We're told that Fremen children, never mind their women, if you see what I mean, are dangerous. But shame. I like the fact that it's shameful death. There will be fewer challengers. Yeah, she's lethal, isn't she? And it seems very matter of fact, but in a sense, it's part of a strategy designed to reduce the amount of challengers coming to Paul. You know, but at the same time, he hasn't made that decision for himself. And again, that's so you're far too busy with your meditations. You know, it's an interesting thing. But absolutely, it's quite impressive that no one ever beats Muad'Dib for his young girlfriend kills them. Oh dear, there's Joseph saying Chani is the badass of House Tabar, a defender of Muad'Dib and mother of God. Yes, indeed, I suppose. And again, that's it. Yes. We've we haven't got there yet, Joseph. We're going, yes, but this is indeed the mother of Leto II. That's a very good point. Messianic, I was surprised at how different the Jewish concept of a Messiah is from the Christian model. That's an interesting point, Chris. Yeah, Messiahs are I've pointed out that within the let me see, how would we put it, the Roman province of Judea. We'll go to that one. There are lots of messiahs around at the time. But yeah, I think a messiah in the Greek means anointed one. It's someone who's been anointed with oil, basically. So yes, what it means today. Particularly within the Christian concept, is I've come, it's Jesus come back to save everyone, a savior figure, if you like. But yeah, it is an interesting term. Is it from Messias, isn't it? Let's see, did a wee bit of work on. Hang on. Give me the etymology. Etymology. Oh, there's an etymology. Crocodile. I wonder what that is. From Massia, anointed. Greek from Messias, in Old English. There we are. The promise to... Yeah, I've done a wee bit of work on this before. The promised deliverer of the Jewish nation prophesied in the Hebrew Bible. Jesus, regarded by Christians as the Messiah of the Hebrew prophecies and the Savior of humankind. A leader regarded as a savior of a particular country, group, or cause. No, but yeah, it is a term that's worth looking into. Let's see what Wikipedia just has to say. In Abrahamic religions, a Messiah or Messias, Romanized Messiah, the anointed one. As a savior, liberator of a group of people. The concepts of Mashiach, Messianism, and of a messianic age originated in Judaism and in the Hebrew Bible, in which a Mashiach is a king or high priest traditionally anointed with holy anointing oil. There we go. What's that there? Christos, isn't it? Greek for the Hebrew Messiah occurs 41 times in the LXX and the Hebrew Bible. Messiah. Yeah. And I think, I mean, as it exists outside of, well, with the popular culture, how would that be, I suppose? Let's have a look. Outside of, I would say outside of almost all of those religious terms, the Messiah just pretty much means a savior. Just in common use of, that kind of thing. It's a bit, I think there's all sorts of things that have kind of funny meanings, but if you look at the word king, for example, a king in this country, Chris, is a person who owns a lot of cows. Really, in the ancient world here, that's what you would call a farmer today. But yeah, there's lots of things like that. And I think it's interesting how language shifts about from culture to culture. For those of us who all speak English, English is the language of the Angles, of the English, the Angles and the Saxons, and as a Germanic language. And for example, and 1/3 of the English language is pretty much Latin or Greek, for example. And it has so many words from pretty much every culture you can think of. There's something in English, it's what makes it a good lingua franca, if you like. Language of commerce. Yes, indeed. Yeah. Saviors. Not too sure we've had one yet, have we? Let's see. Where do we get to? Anger. There we are. Yeah. So this it's strategy. Challengers are dealt with by me. Muad'Dib's woman will bring you to shameful death. Goodness gracious. And she's trained in the weirding way as well. And she's also a person within a position of respect within the Fremen community, that of a Sayadina. So Paul, after this, goes, yes, he told himself that had certainly happened. So, and again, we get this, there's a term for this here. It was true past. Sounds rather Orwellian, doesn't it? And the number of challengers testing the new blade of Muad'Dib did drop dramatically. So it works. Muad'Dib did drop dramatically. I quite like that. I've written there, Frank Herbert's liking his alliteration there. Very good. And I've just put next to this, in other words, he's still dreaming. And then somewhere in a world not of the dream, a haunt of motion, the cry of a night bird, I dream, he reassured himself. It's the spice meal. There we go, that anchor of this meal. And again, it's pretty much, isn't it? It's with the spice in the food. It does. And if this happens to him every time he has dinner, it must, I suppose, then it's probably, every meal is going to be laced with spice. It's in everything. And he's going to react like this probably quite a lot. Hence, it kind of makes sense with, I'd not disturb your meditations with the likes of him. I dare say he's probably doing a fair bit of that, if you see what I mean. The spice meal. Still, about him, there's a feeling of abandonment. And he wondered if it was possible his Ruh spirit had slipped over somehow into the world where Fremen believed he had his true existence. Into the Alam al-Mithal, the world of similitudes. That metaphysical realm, where all physical limitations were removed. And he knew fear at thought of such a place, because the removal of limitations meant removal of all points of reference. And we're told, just to run through this list a little bit, in the landscape of myth, he could not orient himself and say, I am I because I am here. Now, there's quite a lot in this here, isn't there? I dream. Let's see. A feeling of abandonment. Wondering if it's possible that his rose spirit has slipped over somehow into the world where the Fremen believed he had his true existence. In other words, he's wondering has a part of him ended up in the dream world, if you like. I'm guessing that's what that means. Now, let me see. I've got the word Ru here. It means self, spirit, or soul in Sufism, and I've made a wee note to see Wikipedia. Let me just have a look. Probably should have bookmarked it, shouldn't I? Let me see. Hang on. Wikipedia. Bear with me a wee second, folks. There we go. So Ru, if you type it in to Wikipedia, what we get is the Holy Spirit, Ru al-Qudus, is mentioned 4 times in the Quran, where it acts as an agent of divine action of communication. Pardon me. It said, I'll just quickly, there's a fair amount to this, so if anybody would like to know a bit more, I'd recommend reading this wee article. Let's see, it says the Muslim interpretation of the Holy Spirit is generally consistent with other interpretations based upon the Old and New Testaments. Further, the Quran refers to Ru as Ru al-Qudus, the Holy Spirit or Spirit of Holiness, and Ru al-Amin, the faithful or trustworthy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit is once more commonly known as Archangel Gabriel, the messenger to all prophets. Now, in Sufism, below that, it says that Ru is a person's immortal, essential self, pneuma, i.e. the spirit or soul. And the Quran itself does not describe Ru as the immortal self. Nevertheless, in some contexts, it animates inanimate matter. Further, it appears to be a metaphorical being such as an angel, and in one instance, Ru refers to Jesus. Outside of the Quran, Ru may also refer to a spirit that roams the earth or a ghost. And among the al-Lata if as-Sita, it is the third purity. Now, that's just the kind of introductory paragraph there on Wikipedia. And there's a fair bit to it. It's super enormous, but it's kind of interesting. So that's what we're talking about in terms of his Ru spirit, if you like. So part of him's thinking, is it possible that this is kind of somehow drifted into Alam al-Mithil? Now, the world of similitudes. That's a good word. I like. Verisimilitude is a great word, isn't it? So similitude is kind of what am I looking up here? Alam al. Similitude's like a state of being, basically, if you want for a definition. So verisimilitude, for example, is a truthful state of being. We often look for good verisimilitude. It's not necessarily the same as realism, but in writing, it's a sign you're a good writer if you can do it well. Let's see. Sorry, I'll look. There it is. In the terminology of the Imperium, it describes it as the mystical world of similitudes where all physical limitations are removed. And I was just wondering very quickly, bear with me a second, if there's anything on let's see, bear with me. Let's see, the mystical. No, it's just the term seems to be derived from mystic Sufi. This is from Khaled Bahildon's website. It's the same quote, Alam al-Mithril. Just what we have in the book here, but he has this just under there. It says the term seems to be derived from mystic Sufi traditions. In Arabic, it means world of similitudes. There we go. So the metaphysical realm where all physical limitations were removed. Has he ended up part of himself there? And it's a fear, isn't it? He knew fear at thought of such a place. Sounds like a dream realm, doesn't it? For the removal of limitations, all physical, for example, temporal, etc., this metaphysical realm where physical limitations have been removed. So the removal of limitations meant the removal of all points of reference. And I've written next to that, does it? I'm not too sure about that. Perhaps that's for him. And then we're told in the landscape of myth, he could not orientate himself and say, I am I because I am here. So in the sense of himself, it sounds like I don't know what you guys think. If you're aware of the whole general semantics thing, let me see. That should be a book I should be able to pick out if I can see it. It's quite an old one, isn't it, from a conference in the 30s? The idea that the map is not the territory. If you see what I mean, that there stinks of that. I think it stinks of that kind of thinking. But essentially, I can't find myself in any given landscape. I can't say that that's me because I'm there. And if you want to even equate it to no matter where you go, there you are. But where's there? Because I am I. Because I am here. He doesn't know where here is. He's got no, as I said, we're talking about points of reference, an anchor point. And the thing that is anchoring him here within himself is the meal, the food that is probably causing this state of, this dream state for Paul, but it's also a point in reality for him. And so, but just it's an interesting phrase, especially when we consider, Herbert's background reading into mythology, etc. In the landscape of myth, he could not orientate himself and say, I am I because I am here. And remember, he's building his own myth in a way, isn't he? His mother had once said, the people are divided, some of them in how they think of you. And again, this is in the past. And Paul's response to this is, to himself is, I must be waking from the dream. For this had happened, these words from Jessica. Jessica was now a Reverend Mother of the Fremen. These words had passed through reality. So they've happened, they've occurred. So it's everything that he's saying. He almost all of these events in his mind, every single one of them has been questioned by him. Is this real? Did it happen? Or has it yet to happen? Is it a memory of my true? Is it true past? Or is it a memory of something yet to come? So these words had passed through reality, and Paul knew that Jessica was fearful. I think that this is quite paradoxical. That's the word I like to use with Frank, because at the end of the day, I thought that was the best word to describe his writing, if you had to pick one word for it. He knew Jessica was fearful of religious relationship between himself and the Fremen. She didn't like the fact that people of Sietch and Graben referred to Muad'Dib as him. I love that, by the way. If anybody knows, it's him. What is it you call him? Dom DeLuise, is it? In the Cannonball Run? In Cannonball Room 2, dun dun dun. It's him. I love that. It's one of my favourite characters ever. Captain Chaos, isn't it? Himself, who later on becomes Captain USA. But I love the way he always refers to him as him, So yeah, she didn't like the fact that the people of Sietch and Graben referred to Muad'Dib as him. Not fun. We're told she went questioning among the tribes, sending out her Sayadina spies, collecting their answers and brooding on them. So the priesthood is also the Sayadina spies. I wonder, are they pretty much Bene Gesserit spies at this point, with Jessica in charge? But she has her own spy network, the priesthood, the female priesthood of the Fremen. Collecting their answers, brooding on them, and so it's about, what are they collecting answers on? About how they view Paul, basically. She tells him a Bene Gesserit proverb. She quoted at him. This is in the past again. Here we go. This is one of the more famous, I suppose, quotes from Dune and from Herbert. I think we've heard him talk. Well, we've heard him use this in conversation, I think, on interviews and stuff. When religion and politics travel in the same cart, the writers believe nothing can stand in their way. Their movement becomes headlong, faster and faster and faster. They put aside all thoughts of obstacles and forget that a precipice does not show itself to the man in a blind rush until it's too late. It's a very important quotation. Excuse me while I get a wee sip of fluids here, folks. Really important. And I don't know what you any of you think of this. I'd be quite interested on your opinions. I'd argue that religion isn't supposed to be focused on mankind, humanity's unhappiness. And it generally is about what comes next, I think, but it's about the God. It depends on the religion. But if politics is, again, I'd run with that definition of the science of the happiness of humanity, if you like. Religion's not supposed to be a negative thing, is it? But it almost always is. Organized religion, certainly from my point of view, I have very little that's good to say about organized religion. At the same time, I have very little to say about organized politics. Excuse me, that's good anymore either. I suppose the question I'm wondering is, do we consider religion to be not apolitical or non-political? Because I think religion should be political. So when they travel hand in hand, the writers believe, so I have the twin powers of religion and politics. Hand in hand, they believe nothing can stop them. They rush headlong, faster and faster and faster. And they put aside all thoughts of obstacles and forget that a precipice does not show itself to the man in a blind rush until it's too late. Things have a way of accelerating and snowballing out of control, don't they? That kind of thing. Joseph saying, among my favourite bits of Dune. Yeah, this whole chapter is very intriguing, and it really is. It's a bit much to deal with. It really. I always thought it really did give you a sense of what it must be like, a little bit, to be like what Paul's experiencing. This first half of the chapter, anyway. Religion and politics. Yeah. We have a saying in this country: don't talk religion or politics. In fact, you'll find it in a thing in pubs, for example, no religion or politics, etc., because it's guaranteed. Which I think is appalling, actually, that you can't talk about them, but it's guaranteed to start violence. Pretty much. It's not the only thing you'll find in a lot of pubs here like that. The other one is, there are no strangers here, only friends you've yet to meet, that kind of thing, providing you don't talk religion or politics. But it's one of the things I say to people: if you're going to come to Northern Ireland, I encourage you to talk about religion and politics. Excuse me. Religion and politics have got to stay separate. I think I think religion, politics isn't government to me. That's a separate thing. I think religion and government should be separate. I think religion should have a lot more politics, because then it would be more concerned with what makes us happy and what's for our well-being, rather than what some ancient dogma suggests, or some bizarre rules. But I don't know. A lot of the religions in this country are they're male dominated. They're backward considerably. I think that's the thing. They're really just not up with the times at all. We had a census here recently, and just to show you how much control on the narrative is here. People didn't matter your choices of what's your faith, or it didn't really matter, but they wanted to know, were you of a Protestant or Catholic background? And that's how we do our census here. And it doesn't matter if you put, I'm a Buddhist, but it went, okay, you're a Buddhist, but please indicate which background you originally came from. And it's such polarized thinking. It's two-dimensional thinking, but it's actually done for deliberate reasons. So you can't. It's got to the point where I don't think you can, as much as you can trust population numbers, you certainly can't trust the census here. Just my opinion, yeah. But if I suppose that religion is supposed to be concerned with what's best for us, not what's beneficial. I think. But it's a particularly important quote. Things get out of control, they accelerate, and off a cliff it goes, and it's all everything. There you go. Pretty much is what he's saying. And it's a Bene Gesserit proverb we've just been told. So Paul's recollection is that he sat in his mother's quarters in the inner chamber, shrouded by dark hangings, surfaces covered with woven patterns out of Fremen mythology. I'd love to see those. I suppose it's the second time we've heard mythology here. He sat there hearing her out, noting the way she was always observing, even when her eyes were lowered. We get a bit of a description of Jessica, how she's changed a wee bit in this time. The oval face had new lines in it at the corners of her mouth, but her hair was still like polished bronze, wide-set green eyes, though hid beneath their overcasting of spice-imbued blue. So they're developing the eyes of Ibad here. And this is, I suppose, this little discussion that they're having. Paul says the Fremen have a simple, practical religion. And Jessica's response, nothing about religion is simple. I'd agree with that. Paul, seeing a clouded future that still hung over them, found himself swayed by anger. Another moment of Paul's anger. He gets angry quite a lot, doesn't he? It's just worth noting. He could only say, religion unifies our forces. It's our mystique. There we go. So we talked previously about the discussion of how do you, with, I suppose, in House Atreides about the Sardaukar. Then we've also had the same discussion with the Baron and Thufir Hawat about how do you build up this kind of elite force, this, these fanatically loyal and deadly troops. And what we've just been told there is pretty much the same thing. It's the part of it is the elitism, the bravura, etc. But it's the mystique, the idea that we're special, this kind of thing. The religion unifies our forces. It is our mystique. And of course, we've been told that the Fremen have a new religious leader, and he's it. This is a religion in operation. And I suppose, from one point of view, I suppose, what we're just saying there previously about religion and politics, we've just been told that in the previous chapter, that Paul is a religious leader. He's also a political leader, and he's also a military leader. So politics and religion are going hand in hand with, in Paul's case, with I suppose the people are the army as well, than the military, which would probably be even worse than the Bene Gesserit's quote. Nothing simple about religion. Religion unifies our forces. It is our mystique. And I don't think she likes this. I think the reason is, if we listen to her response, you deliberately cultivate this air, this bravura, she charged. You never cease indoctrinating. And I suppose if we want, who does that remind us of? And that's just a description of Paul's father, isn't it? And to a degree, Leto's father. Bravura, indoctrination, and propaganda, isn't it? Nobody does propaganda better than the Atreides. And of course, thus you yourself taught me. So this is still the past. And we get this little memory again about Jessica that day, that she'd been full of contentions or arguments that day. And we're told that the circumcision ceremony for little Leto had occurred. Oh dear. Paul had understood reasons for her being upset. She hadn't accepted his liaison. It's an interesting word. The marriage of youth with Chani. Chani had produced an Atreides son, and Jessica found herself unable to reject the child and mother. So there we go. And we're told Jessica stirred finally under his stare. And we'll get, hang on, I'll have a wee look there. It's the old joke. Chris says, you're an atheist, you're Catholic atheist, or a Protestant atheist. Yeah. And aye. I know. I was curious about the census actually. And I find the most recent census here quite bizarre. I really did. Censuses are quite interesting things. If you want to read, one of the biggest problems that the Bible has, that the Gospels have, is the census. Didn't happen, and also not how a census works at all. Very strange thing in the Bible, that I think. Yeah, I was I was trying to create a character. Maybe I'll do a few things with it, Chris. But the name of the character was Catholic a Prodnot. But I had a teenager recently tell me that they were a Catholic. Was it a Prodolic or something like that? And I know that they didn't really get it. I suppose it's a generational thing, maybe now. But that they said they're one parent of each, and that they'd come up with this term. But yeah. Yeah, we got a bit of our craziness is in full swing here at the minute, unfortunately. Now, let's see, where were we? Oh, yeah. So, this is a bit Jessica's statement to him here. You think me an unnatural mother? Paul's response is, of course not. I see the way you watch me when I'm with your sister. You don't understand about your sister. Here we go. Paul says, I know why Alia is different. She was unborn, part of you when you change the water of life. She gets cut off. You know nothing of it. Big exclamation mark there. We're not really given any sense of indication by Herbert what Jessica's emotion is here in the text, but it comes across as anger to me. But all we get is an exclamation mark in the fact that she's cut him off. I've just written what emotion here. So Paul is, we're told, suddenly unable to express knowledge gained out of its time, and said only, I don't think you unnatural. At this point, she sees his distress. And so she gives him a bit of comfort here. There is a thing, son. Yes, I do love your Chani. I accept her. And again, this memory is another thing. So we're getting, it is a montage of things here, isn't it? And some of them are quite interesting, quite heavy. This was real, not the imperfect vision to be changed by the twistings of time's own birth. Paul's reassurance gave him a new hold on his world. Bits of solid reality began to dip through the dream state into his awareness. He knew suddenly that he was in Herrig, a desert camp. That Chani had planted their still tent, on flower sand for softness. Not a type of sand there. Could only mean that Chani was nearby. Chani, his soul, his Sahaya, sweet as the desert spring. Chani up from the palmaries of the deep south. So again, we were kind of going, well, is all of these things, Chani was in the deep south, has that happened? Yeah, that's happened. Chani just killed someone that's in the interim, and she's been in the south, and then she's come back. So again, I suppose with Chani's meal, if she cooked the meal, that's the thing that's anchoring him in the present. So, and then we've had this unnatural mother, this discussion about Alia. And I suppose the concept of the unborn is here now as well. She was unborn, part of you when you change the water of life. You know nothing of it. I know a bunch of you have had a wee look at Erewhon by Samuel Butler. And this idea of the unborn is very, very similar to the idea of the preborn in Erewhon. Yeah, and it's a fascinating book, by the way. I was just wondering, I have no idea where any of my books are at the minute. They're such a mess. I'm going to get around to sorting them. But we have these particularly very interesting chapters about how the Erewhonians give birth, and these things called birth formula, etc., etc. And it's all about that. Basically, the Erewhonians are alien beings that have, I suppose, forms that require them to be born, and it's it's a very good satire on kind of having children in Victorian society as well. But this concept comes from here, from Butler's ideas. And if anybody ever gets a chance to read Butler's Erewhon, it's worth doing as a really good pastoral utopia, Victorian pastoral utopia. It's a topsy turvy world, one of those. But if you were just kind of curious about this idea, then you wouldn't. I was looking for it because you wouldn't need to read the whole thing if you like. It's just a particular couple of chapters. I think there's a chapter called Birth Formula within the book, I think. So if you just wanted to explore that concept and nothing else, I think that chapter would do. But it's very, very good for the whole Darwin Among the Machines things. A lot of the ideas that are in Dune are from that book. And it was way, way ahead of its time. Haven't read Erewhon in a long time. I really enjoyed reading it the first time. And it does have that kind of, it's a slightly better written thing, I suppose, but it has that kind of feel, if you like, of those kind of Journey to the Center of the Earth, those kind of books, if you like. I would say it's better written. Not to put down Jules Verne at all. So yeah, his distress as well. I don't think you unnatural. Do you think not? This unnatural. I suppose it's about part of that's really about Alia, isn't it, as well? So reality's starting to bleed through a wee bit here. Let's see. Bits of solid reality begin to dip through the dream state into his awareness. He knew suddenly that he was in. Did I write that down right? What number is that? 29. A herrig, yes, I did. A desert camp. Chani planted there still sit on flower sand. So that means that she's nearby. And then we're told that she's come up from the palmaries of the deep south. Now he remembered her singing a sand chanty. Chanty, I think, is it I looked at this, I think it's more of an American spelling, but it's would be a shanty. And of course, it's kind of that inverting of the sea and the sand, isn't it? The sand shanty, a sea shanty is what we're talking about. To him in the time for sleep, he remembered her singing a sand shanty to him in the time for sleep. So this is Chani's sand shanty. Here we go. I just said to read this. Oh, my soul, have no taste for paradise this night. I swear by Shai-hulud, you will go there, obedient to my love. There we go. So put aside your worries of paradise and God for tonight. It's time to make love, that kind of thing. It's one of those sea shanties, sand shanties. And then we're told she sang the walking song that lovers shared on the sand. Its rhythm like the drag of the dunes against the feet. And so we have, oh God, here we go. The walking song. Tell me of thine eyes, and I will tell thee of thy heart. Tell me of thy feet, and I will tell thee of thy hands. Tell me of thy sleeping, and I will tell thee of thy waking. Tell me of thy desires, and I will tell thee of thy need. So there we go, a bit of a romantic sand shanties. There we go. So, it's a bit of a tongue twister, isn't it? Let's see. Sand shanties sung by Chani, is it? Chani's sand shanties. Not that easy to say, I think. There's Taliel saying, in Erewhon you'll find the preborn, the fate of the prescient, anti-tech, which gave Butler the name of the jihad. Yeah, it's tons there. I think I said about five big things. There is a messianic part to Erewhon, isn't it? But it's the Erewhon Revisited, which isn't that great. But yeah, Erewhon. I think you looked at it, Babs, didn't you? And you had to listen to an audiobook. I think it's a great book. As I've always pointed out, it's if you're going to read Erewhon or listen to an audiobook version of it, however you want to absorb it, you really should check out Vril, The Coming Race by Edward Bulwer-Lytton. The two books go together, absolutely. Just in terms of content, in terms of interest, both men at the time, both men were considered the author of the other book. because they're both published anonymously. So they're quite interesting books, I think. And there's some really nice. I think there's a really nice illustrated version of Erewhon out there. Yeah, pastoral utopias. I quite like them. So at this point, Paul heard someone on a balisette in another tent, and his thoughts then go to Gurney Halleck. So I suppose Gurney Leto II and Alia, we've been getting them mentioned, but they haven't appeared, and it was good building these characters up before we see them again, I think. He thought then of Gurney Halleck, and reminded by the familiar instrument, thought of Gurney, whose face he had seen in his smuggler band, but had not seen him, could not see him or know him, we're told. Pardon me, lest he lead the Harkonnens inadvertently to the son of the Duke they'd kill. And that's Paul they're talking about there. Now, interestingly enough, I suppose it's kind of they've seen him, but whatever it is that within Paul's prescient ability, if at this stage he alerts, hey, Gurney man, or alerts Gurney that he will come and see him, or etc., it causes something to lead the Harkonnens inadvertently to the son of the Duke they'd kill. So it's a problem, and that's why he hasn't let Gurney know. But we're told, but the style of the player has distinctiveness of the fingers of the balisette, brought the real musician back to Paul's memory. And of course, we're told this is Chat the Leaper, who I've done a wee thing, rank captain of the Feda-Keen, leader of the Feda-Keen death commandos who guarded Muad'Dib. So we're having a wee strum. Feda-Keen, this is based on a real word, which is the Fedai, which in Arabic means something similar to self-sacrificers. Let's see if we can. Hope I'm pronouncing that correct. Self-sacrificers. Just if you go with Wikipedia, it says it's an Arabic term used to refer to various military groups willing to sacrifice themselves for a larger campaign. There we go. Etymology: Fidai is derived from Fidayon, literally meaning those who sacrifice themselves. So there we go. And examples from different countries and states, etc., etc. There we go. So this is going to be Paul's personal, his death commandos, his personal bodyguard, etc., etc. Let's see. Carlos Crescelius. Hello, Carlos. How are you doing? Where would we be without religion and the Crusades, jihads, and inquisitions they inspire? And most evil of all, the tele-evangelists. I don't know. My money is we'd be at least 1,000 years ahead of where we are now, Carlos. That's pretty much my judgment on it, particularly in relation to the loss of knowledge and the Dark Ages, and then the return of that knowledge, if you like, in the Renaissance. Call it 1,000 years, but yeah. But part of me also wonders, maybe it's a necessity that we such things prevent us from going forward too quickly. But at the same time, they're just like the Crusades, Slaughterville, you know. All the dangerous robber barons can go to the Holy Land, and the priesthood can enjoy their wives at home. It's just knowing that they won't get killed by these robbers. Yeah, Crusaders are a funny bunch of geezers, aren't they? Terry says the beginning of a bit of Erewhon is a bit of a slug. Once he's found it moves along nicely. The audiobook is available here on YouTube as a LibriVox. Excellent, thank you. I tend to find a lot of books like that are a wee bit slow to get going, and it's often that there's a journey involved, and we have to it's the daily sort of motion. But I would say it's the same with other books like Journey to the Center of the Earth. They do take a wee bit to go, but they're often not too long. Once you're away, once you're in that world, if one of these utopias or dystopias or fantasy worlds or whatever, but once you get there, that's it. It's really good, you know. But I suppose it's a different era, a different style of literature. But some Victorian books or what I would call fin de sequel books, can be a wee bit tricky to get into. But yeah, I don't know. Once you're away, you're away, and others are just supremely good writers. There is no such thing, you know. I had to read a fair bit of Samuel Butler's stuff, and I'd probably say Erewhon's the best that I read. Yeah, I've got a bunch of his stuff here. And he's certainly somebody I'd never encountered before doing this PhD. So Dune led me to Samuel Butler and to Erewhon and to all, well, as you know, to all sorts of things, which was pretty good. But yeah, I do recommend it. And yeah, a lot of books I'd say, whether they're on audiobook or you're reading them or whatever way you want to absorb them, some books are a wee bit slow to get into, but give them a chance. The ones that used to bug me quite a bit, I'll tell you this much, is I don't know if anybody's read the really chunky Robert Heinlein books, things like Strange in a Strange Land, Time Enough for Love, The Number of the Beast, things like that. I was just wondering, is there any of them here? Just then grab one, but where would I've got a fair bit of Heinlein, but it's the big books in particular. And there's something that happens, and I don't know if it's just me, but it's within his books. It's the big ones. It's about 2/3 of the way through. Everything just goes flat, and it's such a slog to get through. And you go, "Wow, this book was brilliant up, and what's happened?" And it's like take a break or something, and it can be so hard to get through. And then for some reason, it's not much of his books. Whatever happens, you get through that, and bang, you get back. And I always find his books, that kind of dead patch, it's but just around the 2/3 of the way through the book, and I personally was always enjoying those books quite a lot, and just what the heck's happened here? And it's almost the point where you want to just throw the book away. If you push on, those books are all absolutely worth reading. In fact, I'd say less so with Strange in a Strange Land, but particularly with Time Enough for Love is a real good example of that, and The Number of the Beast as well. Yeah. Oh, I've got to get my books organized. That's just appalling. Stranger in a Strange Land should be required reading. I grok it. Totally grok it. Yeah, it's a great book. I love it. I'm a big fan of Heinlein. I have a bunch of his stuff here. I suppose lesser known stuff that I haven't read yet. But for a wee while, I sort of poured into him. And I tend to do that, actually, if I can get an author who's quite good. No, I haven't read too much of him. I'll read that next book. So I stayed on him for quite some time. And I really do enjoy Robert Heinlein's writing. But A Stranger in a Strange Land is an exquisite book. Talk about, you say Tan Staffel. But the first few pages of that book made me extremely angry. It was well written, you know. And Valentine Smith and Jubal Herschel, I think, is a great character. Really interesting. Especially to someone like me in provincial Northern Ireland, you know. So, let's see. So this is Chet the Leaper having a wee bit of it. It reminded him a wee bit of Gurney Halleck, but then the way that this guy plays this instrument brings it to reality. That's Chet the Leaper, the leader of my Feta King Death Commandos. So Paul remembers that we are in the desert. We're in the central erg beyond the Harkonnen patrols. I am here to walk the sand, to lure a maker and mount him by my own cunning, that I may be a Fremen entire. Ha! And as somebody pointed out, Chani is a badass who's going to give birth to a god. And I just thought I'd also point out here that he must mount to lure a maker and mount him by my own cunning, that I may be a Fremen entire. And I've written next to that, not by Leto II standards he won't be. Whenever we get there to the God Emperor, he does not view Paul as a true Fremen. And this in Paul's head is the thing that will make him one. So we're told that he felt the Mala pistol at his belt, the crysknife. He felt the silence surrounding him, a special pre-morning silence. The night birds have gone, and the day creatures have yet to signal their alertness to their enemy, the sun. We get this: you must ride the sand in the light of day, that Shai-hulud shall see and know you have no fear. Thus we turn our time around and set ourselves to sleep this night. And I've just put day becomes night for this test. In a way, there's a kind of inversion. And Paul wakes up. And so this is finally where we're at. I've even put this in the book. He wakes up at this point. That's what Stilgar had said. That's the last words coming to him. Paul wakes up. He quietly sat up. So we're into the present now. And again, this is Jubal Herschel is insane, and I love it. Yeah, is it the whole front, isn't it? That thing. I think that's. I read that when I was quite young. I was still at school. Yeah, I really, really do like Robert. I recommend Robert Heinlein's books. The ones that I've read. Friday's a really good book as well. I find that a quite interesting one. The ideas of S families and stuff. Starship Troopers, of course. The Number of the Beasts one that would possibly do your head in, because all of the characters are hateful, and they're meant to be. I think they're 4 or 5 Floxy Noxy Nihila Pelificators, aren't they? And I suppose the joke in the book is that if you know the word Floxy Noxy Nihila Pelificator, then you must be one. Floxy Noxy Nihila Pelification is the habit of saying things are worthless. Or useless, that kind of putting things down. You'll find a particular British politician who's a bit of a twat likes to use it because he thinks he's sophisticated. And that would be Jacob Rees-Mogg, who also wishes he had a classical education. Dear oh dear, that's a man who's pretending to be something else, isn't he? Bizarre looking. He looks like something out of an old British comic. Let's see. So Paul wakes up. Paul quietly sat up, felt the looseness of a slack stillsuit around his body. The shadowed still tent beyond. So softly he moved, yet Chani heard him. And she spoke from the tent's gloom at another shadow. It's not yet full light, beloved. Sahaya. With half a laugh in his voice, he replies. You call me your desert spring, but this day I am thy goad. I am the Sayadina who watches that the rites be obeyed. So we're in the present. And I think we've had all of these events that have been mentioned in Paul's dream. Was that real? Has that happened? Yeah. So we've had Leto II is Chani him and Chani have had a child. They've given birth to Leto II. Jessica's given birth to Alia. He's managed to enshrine the skull of his father following a raid and enshrined it at Hard Pass. We've had this discussion about Chani killing his challengers and how that's reduced, and that these things were in the true past. And the worry about his raw spirit, like a part of him being left in the dream world, which you can understand why from this, can't you? And we've been talking about the landscape of myth, and his mother giving him the Fremen proverb about religion and politics traveling in hand, their concerns there. Discussion of religion and politics, and then we've had the discussion between him and Jessica about Alia, and whether do I think Jessica's unnatural. And it's a distressing conversation for Paul. And then we've had the love songs, the sand shanties. Sorry, so you can spell shanty Chanty, which in my copy of the book that's how it's spelled. But I normally go with S shanty, a sea shanty, a sand shanty. The two songs that she sings to him, and then we have a bit of Balaset playing by Chat the Leaper. Paul figuring out and then he wakes up. So it's a whole, isn't it, a barrage of images and events that have happened in the time that's passed. And all of this confusion for Paul is, are these things real? Have they happened? And he's got to work this out. And yeah, you can understand it's quite problematic, I'd say, for him. So at this point in the book, we've entered the now in the real world, and we get this transition, and we're going to get a shift as well. We're going to, I suppose it's less confusing, but we're heading. We've had a couple of mentions of myth, and what is important, particularly with the Fremen and the way that they're manipulated, is ritual. and rights, etc. And these are the keys to manipulating, if you like, the Fremen. Do the ritual, perform the rite, etc. That lines up with this or that part of the prophecy, or these people will do X, Y, and Z if you can do that. And then ritual, I suppose, is very much a part of religions, particularly societies where people wouldn't be literate or pre-literate, in a long time past. It's one of the reasons why we get things like cants and recants and litanies. And you would get this in countries like Ireland, even in America with the black communities, for example, where, again, here with problems with education and British imperialism, all of this stuff, a lot of people can't read. So when you go to church, one person will, generally somebody can read, one person will read, and everybody recites or repeats. And it's part of things like rituals like that are kind of a hangover from days of a lack of literacy. And also when there's language and the written word is considered mysterious, and a book is considered to have real power because it is a thing of God and mysterious, and most people can't read it, if you like, So ritual as well, in terms of Frank Herbert's research, we've mentioned Lord Raglan's study of myth based on ritual and drama. Drama being, in other words, we talked about I'm a theatre of processes. So ritual and drama are ritual and theatre. I've very much observed this looking at my father's funeral, which was, I'll tell you about it sometimes, quite funny about the way he was buried. But in terms of all of that, I observed it very much from I'll put it as a professional point of view, I'll say, and very much was exactly what I suspected it to be. But such things can give comfort, can't they? Patterns, rituals. And that takes us back to what we have at the beginning. Within this paragraph, or this chapter, sorry. We try to copy the patterns in our lives and our society, seeking the rhythms, the dances, the forms that comfort. Let's see, where do we get to? So things have taken a bit of a change, and I think this is good. It could be, a lot of this could have been quite confusing for the reader, I think. And it's Paul's assurances to us within the chapter. Yeah, that happened. We've really got his word for it, I suppose. But we'll see things do line up here. So we're back in the present. And this is that I'm not going to be your desert spring today, says Chani. I'm going to be your goad. I'm the thing that will move you forward, if you like. I'm the Sayadina priestess who watches that the rites be obeyed. So it has to be done properly. And again, just always remembering that Chani is part of the female priesthood here. And in a position of power, I'd argue it's just below that of the Reverend Mother. So it's I'd say it's just simply subordinate to the highest position within that priesthood, but it's immediately below it. So Paul began tightening his stillsuit, and he said, "You told me once the words of the Kitab al-Ibar. You told me, woman is thy field, go then to thy field and till it." Chani agreed, "I'm the mother of thy firstborn." So that's confirmation. If we only had Paul's word for it up until this point, Chani telling us this confirms that Leto II has been born. For anybody who doesn't know, by the way, sorry, just to let we know, we do know what happens to this Leto. This certain people jump off of the Dune series. The Leto II we're talking about here is not the God Emperor. It's not him. This is a different Leto. And there's a bit of confusion as to why this Leto II I suppose why the other one isn't the third. I suppose it's kind of interesting. So from Paul's viewpoint, we told he saw Chani in the greyness and matched movement. She matched the movement for movement, securing the stillsit for open desert. You should get all the rest you can, she says. Paul recognized her love for him, and speaking then, and chided her gently. The Sayadina of the watch does not caution or warn the candidate. So the bit of cheeky banter between the two of them. She slid across to his side, touched cheek with palm. Today I am both the watcher and the woman. Paul said, you should have left this duty to another. And Chani's response is quite pragmatic, I think. Waiting is bad enough. At best, I'd sooner be at thy side. So we're told Paul kissed her palm before he secured the face flap of his suit, turned and cracked the seal on the tent. The air that came in held the chill of the not quite dryness that precipitated trace dew in the dawn. With it came the smell of pre-spice mass, and the mass that they had detected to the northeast told them that there would be a maker nearby. A worm. So, and again, I do like to point this out. There's lots of these moments within Dune, but rebirths, if you like, or symbolic rebirths, if you like, but generally involve Paul going through a sphincter of something. And once again, I suppose we did way back with the still tent with Paul and Jessica. And this is the thing that runs with some of if any of you get a chance to read The Dragon in the Sea, you'll see this in this book. And it's a kind of recurring motif with Frank Herbert. So Paul, we're told, crawled through the sphincter opening, stood on the sand, stretched muscles, a faint pearl green luminescence etched the eastern horizon. And the tents of his troop were like small false dunes around him in the gloom. He saw a movement to the left. This is the guard, the Fada King, and he knew that they'd seen him. So the Fada King, we're told, knew the peril he faced this day. Each Fremen faced it, and they gave him the last few moments of isolation that he might prepare himself. So they keep their distance a wee bit from him. It must be done today, he told himself. So Paul thought of the power that he wielded in the face of the pogrom, about the old men who sent their sons to him to be trained in the weirding way, about the old men that listened to him now in councils and followed his plans, about the men that returned to pay him the highest Fremen compliment, your plan worked, Muad'Dib. His thought of power, the power he wielded, this is what he's thinking about. I've been reading away at Michael Moorcock's Elric series. I've been tearing through it because it's been so long since I read it, and I'm enjoying it so much. I've been really thinking about Stormbringer, putting these things together and trying to write something about them. And the things are Stormbringer, Tolkien's ring, which is the ring of Gyges, and I was thinking about Paul Atreides' prescient vision, if you like, but it's the power. And I was even going to go with the Death Star as a MacGuffin, if you like. But I was really thinking about Stormbringer and the ring, and the nature of power, if you see what I mean, associated with all three things. For Paul, it is his terrible purpose, his prescient vision. That's the thing here, if you like. Within the Lord of the Rings and the Tolkien's Middle Earth, etc., it's the power of the ring, and they all as power, and of course Stormbringer represents power as well. And the key thing is about it. I suppose I was just thinking about addiction to power. I certainly know that Stormbringer is meant to represent addiction, and so does the ring. But I just got to be just thinking about them. I thought I'd like to muse on them and try and write something about things like this. Your plan worked, Muad'Dib. It's this little statement that Paul makes here. I think whenever we get to Appendix 1 and the little let me see. The little sort of mini adventure with Leto I. I think there's a statement similar to that there. About just what the Fremen do for him, I suppose. It just reminded me on that. Yeah, I'll have to get to that. Let's see. That looks. I'm very much looking forward to getting to Appendix 1. It's been a wee while. So what Paul has never done is what we're talking about here. This yet the meanest and smallest of the Fremen warriors could do a thing that he'd never done. And Paul knew that his leadership suffered from the omnipresent knowledge of this difference. He had not ridden the Maker. And of course, we're going to find out that riding a Maker seems to be a test of adulthood, if you like. A transitional age for young Fremen. They'll, I think, about the age of 12, I believe, that they'll try to ride their first worm. So he'd gone up with the others. We're told he must ride a worm if he wants to lead these people properly, to stop all the knives in the night, that kind of thing. He's gone up with his others for training trips and raids and had not made his own voyage. Until he did, we're told his world was bounded by the abilities of others. Reliance, dependency, isn't it? No true Fremen could permit this. Until he did this, even the great Southlands, the area some 20 thumpers beyond the Erg, denied to him unless he ordered a palanquin. In other words, to ride like a Reverend Mother, basically. Or one of the sick or wounded. That's an interesting point right there. The sick or the wounded. I suppose we get this various, do we leave them to the desert? Do we abandon them? Why not just let them go live in a Sietch? If you see what I mean. But it seems that as much as we're told that the Fremen have practices like this, like abandoning people to the desert, etc., by this very sentence here, we're told that they can take their sick or wounded by palanquin on a worm, and therefore they must do so. So, maybe it's just the blind, I think, but yeah, so I'll have to have a wee look into that. Right, there we go. So the memory returned to him, wrestling with his inner awareness during the night. He'd seen a strange parallel there. If he mastered the Maker, his rule would be strengthened. And we're told that if he mastered the inward eye, this carried its own measure of command. Beyond them both lay the clouded area, the great unrest where all the universe seemed embroiled. So this must be Kralazek, isn't it, I think? The clouded area, the great unrest. So the differences in the way he comprehended the universe haunted him, we're told. Accuracy matched with inaccuracy. He saw in situ, sees everything in its place, in its original place. When it was born, when it came into the pressures of reality, the now had its own life and grew with its own subtle differences. But the terrible purpose remained, and the race consciousness remained. All over it loomed the jihad, bloody and wild. So again, we're getting this. We're getting a little bit of understanding. We're getting a little bit of what it must be like to be Paul. And that the terrible purpose remained. That's the prescient ability. The race consciousness remained. That's the both, isn't it? The race. All over it loomed the jihad, bloody and wild. And of course, we have this, the clouded area, as it's called, the great unrest at this point in the book. So Chani, of course, joined him outside the tent, hugging her elbows, looking up at him from the corners of her eyes, the way she did when studying his mood. And Chani says, "Tell me again about the waters of thy birth world, Usul." So there's that phrase that if we can go all the way back, and if we recall, I wonder if we had it. Have we had it again? Let me see at some point. I'm wondering. I'll go to. Let me see. If we go all the way back. When we have Paul with the Reverend Mother Gaius Helmohim, we're told that Paul closed his eyes. "Tell me about her," is what the Reverend Mother says. "We're in a little place in some rocks where it's sheltered. It's almost night, but it's hot, and I can see patches of sand out on an opening in the rocks. We're waiting for something, for me to go meet some people, and she's frightened but trying to hide it from me, and I'm excited. And she says, tell me about the waters of your homeworld, Uso. And he, of course, he thought, isn't that strange? My homeworld's Caledon, etc., etc. She kept calling him Uso. But it was, tell me about the waters of your homeworld, Uso. And here, it's tell me again about the waters of thy birth world, Uso. So I think we have had it mentioned again. But if not, then it's not the same, is it? I wasn't too sure. And I suppose we get Paul deflecting this away a bit, generally, when he's asked about something like this. He saw that she's trying to distract him, ease his mind of the tensions before the deadly test. It's growing lighter, and he noted that some of the Fada King had already been striking their tents. Paul says there, I'd rather you told me about the Sietch and about our son. Does Leto yet hold my mother in his palm? And Chani says, it's Alia he holds as well, and he grows rapidly. He'll be a big man. What's it like in the south? When you ride the Maker, says Chani, you'll see for yourself. But I wish to see it first through your eyes, says Paul. So we get a wee bit about Sietch life here. And I suppose if this is the separation of the women and children, I'm going to go with the sick and the injured as well. So Chani says it's powerfully lonely. And I just put the word powerfully there, is a bit odd. Odd word just to have been used there. Anyway, Paul touched her Neshoni scarf at her forehead where it protruded from her still suit cap. Why will you not talk about the Sietch? Now, the Neshoni scarf here, we're told, is the mark of a married woman. In terms of still suits, I'm assuming something like a wedding ring or just an indicator that this is a married woman in this still suit. So Chani talks about Sietch life and generally get the sense that it's a busy life and there aren't much men around. I have talked about it, she says. The Sietch is a lonely place without our men. We labour in the factories and the potting rooms. There are weapons to be made, spice to collect for the bribes. There are dunes to be planted to make them grow and to anchor them. That's barrier grasses I put there. There are fabrics and rugs to make, fuel cells to charge. There are children to train that the tribe's strength may never be lost. And she says, Paul says, is nothing then pleasant in the Sietch? Well, because I suppose she's described it in terms of labour, really, hasn't she? Chani says that the children are pleasant. We observe the rites, rituals. We have sufficient food. Sometimes one of us may come north to be with her man, such as now. Life must go on. I just put sounds awful next to that. Paul says, my sister Alia, is she accepted by the people? So we get a wee bit about Alia here. I suppose the words that we're going to pick out here to do with Alia are going to be words like strangeness, witch, exorcisms, exercise, demon, etc. So Chani turned toward him in the growing dawnlight, her eyes bored into him. It's a thing to be discussed another time, beloved. Bit of deflection there. Again, he says, let's discuss it now. You should conserve your energies for the test. So Paul sees that he's touched a sensitive subject here, and here's withdrawal in her voice. The unknown brings its own worries. Presently, she nodded. Yeah, fear of the unknown's a real pain, isn't it? It's better just to know what you should be afraid of, and then you'll probably not be afraid of it. But it's good to know, I think, things rather than not know. Presently, she nodded. So here we go. There is yet misunderstanding because of Alia's strangeness. The women are fearful because a child little more than an infant talks of things that only an adult should know. They do not understand the changes in the womb that made Alia different. There is trouble, Paul asks, and he thought, I've seen visions of trouble over Alia. So Chani looks towards the sunrise, says, some of the women banded to appeal to the Reverend Mother. They demanded that she exorcise the demon in her daughter. What a lovely thing to do. They quoted the scripture, suffer not a witch to live among us. And Paul says, and what did my mother say to them? And Jessica's, we're told, response was that she repeated the law and sent the women away abashed. If Alia incites trouble, it is the fault of authority for not foreseeing and preventing the trouble. And we're told that she tried to explain how the change had worked for Alia in the womb, but that the women were angry, didn't want to know because they'd been embarrassed and went away muttering. And Paul's thought here is that there will be trouble because of Alia. Backing up a little bit there, the women come along and they quote scripture, suffer not a witch to live among us. That's Exodus 22:18 is what they're paraphrasing out. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. There's a little quotation that's ended quite a few women's lives, I think. So, we're told the crystal of sand touched his face, bringing the scent of pre-spice mass. And Paul says, El Sayal, the rain of sand that brings the morning. I tried getting a wee bit on this El Sayal. El is pretty much a preposition like the word the. Sayal, then, I think, is from, in Arabic, the root of the verb to flow, if I'm not mistaken, and that's all I could get on that. I've also got C terminology here, so let's have a wee look. Maybe somebody would be able to help with if there's any kind of better meaning for that term. El Sayal, the rain. So the flow of El Sayal, the flow is what I was getting. Possibly wrong. Oh, let's see. There we go. El Sayal, in the terminology of the Imperium, says the rain of sand, a fall of dust which has been carried to medium altitude around 2,000 meters by a Coriolis storm. El Sayals frequently bring moisture to ground level. There we go. So that's what that's about here. And we get a little bit of atmosphere building up here, I think. There's Matt S. saying, the heir to a kingdom meets many new people, each of whom wants to administer a deadly test. It's one of those things, I suppose, isn't it? What's the... I'm thinking, is it Rudyard Kipling's The Man Who'd Be King? But I have a particular favourite of that. It's a 2000 AD one, isn't it? I wonder, do I have it somewhere here? There's oh goodness, there's an old 2000 AD story going way back called Ace Trucking Co., which was kind of taken, I suppose, coming out of the days of Smokey and the Bandit and the Cannonball Run and all of those kind of things, and Convoy, etc. And with all the language and all the CB days, if it's all quite new in Britain, I think it's quite interesting. We had a CB in our house for a wee while. And I think it's called Garp the God, isn't it? I think, but that's how that character dies in the end. I think all these people think he's a god. He decides to go with it, and he has to pass all of the tests. But the last test is, I think, if I remember correctly, he does all right. But I think the last test is to fly his ship into the sun. And I remember being a kid and going, I was kind of quite. I actually do have it somewhere. I think I picked it up in one of those kind of reprints. But it's probably not with an easy reach. But yeah, Ace Trucking Co. is a very good. But yeah, Man Who Would Be King, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's it's a kind of a, it's almost a trope now, isn't it? That kind of story. But yeah, I suppose it goes all the way back to things like the 12 or the 13 labors of Heracles, stuff like that, Yeah, and often there you can here's a task, and often that task should get you killed, so you'll not be back to bother me. That kind of thing. Yeah, there's a lot to those kind of stories. I think they're good fun. There's going to be trouble because of Alia as well. I like that. Alia's sort of build up here is really good. So here we go, a bit of atmosphere. Paul looks out across the grey light of the desert landscape, the landscape beyond pity. There's no pity here. The sand that was from the sand that was form absorbed in itself. Dry lightning streaked dark corners to the south, a sign that a storm had built up its static charge there. The roll of thunder boomed long after. I was kind of going, this is a bit Arrakis Gothic, isn't it? It's that kind of the drama and almost it's alive, that kind of thing. There's something very Gothic about it. I think it's quite right for this little scene as well. And of course we get more ritual here, I suppose. Part of the morning routine, part of the ritual coming up. But Chani describes it as the thunder, the roll of thunder boomed long after, the voice that beautifies the land. That's very poetic. I like that. So we're told the men or more of them are stirring out of their tents. The guards are coming in from the rims. Everything moved smoothly. The ancient routine that required no orders. And this provokes a memory of Paul's father, Leto I's advice. And here it is. Give as few orders as possible. Once you've given orders on a subject, you must always give orders on that subject. I wouldn't agree with that at all. Depends on how competent the people you are giving orders to. Ladies, behave. So that's the girls going barky, barky, woof, woof. If you don't mind, folks, I'm going to take a wee quick break. I'm just going to run to the loo quickly and refresh my brew, and I'll be right back. Bear with me a wee second. Ping, and we're back. Thank you very much for your patience. That's why I can't go to see films that are 3 hours long anymore. Saying that even over 2.5. Poor bladder control. I think I do okay. There we go. So I'll just wait till the head of my beer dissipates a bit because I need some fluids, and then we'll get cracking again. So hope you're all keeping well. We're about 2 hours in here. Where are we at? We've a good wee bit to go. Oh, big chapters, eh? Let's see. There's so much in this chapter. And I do think the bit of the build-up for Alia is pretty good, I think. Ritual is abound here, I suppose. And this is part of their routine, ancient routine that required no orders. Sorry. Give as few orders as possible. Once you've given orders on a subject, you must always give orders on that subject. I think that's very poor thinking. And would depend on a whole lot of things, you know. But so I suppose it's possibly military thinking or lazy thinking. I don't know what you think, you know. Need to bring back the intermission on long movies, says Joseph. Joseph, I couldn't agree more. Um, what was wrong with intermissions? You pulled the curtains came across, people came out with your ice creams and stuff, and you could run to the loo and take your time, get back to your seat, and not miss the film. The last film I saw with a proper curtain intermission in the cinema, uh, I believe, was Born on the 4th of July. Yeah, and I didn't enjoy it that much, to be honest. I watched it again later on video, but I didn't enjoy it in the cinema. And oddly enough, a friend of mine walked out in front of a bus. Literally was that busy talking to a girl that he walked straight out in front of a bus the same day, and I grabbed him by his neck and yanked him back off the road. And my understanding is he's now a successful cancer doctor, but he wouldn't have been anything if I didn't do that. But that's the last film I saw with a proper intermission. But it was always a big part of cinema to me. Loved it. When I was younger, Twitter Paddy can do that too. Particularly when I was young, I sort of said my dad used to kind of take me to work and stuff when I was young, but also take us to the pictures as well. Where he could, safely leave us, I suppose. But we used to get. I used to go to a cinema in Belfast called the Strand Road Cinema quite a lot when I was very young. Always had curtain pulls, but it would often do really, really good double bills. So no, and you didn't want to miss your films, you know. I'm trying to think of the weird double bills are literally, I suppose, like A and B movies. I suppose last trying to remember one of the best ones was Saturn 3 doubled up with Hawk the Slayer. That was that was an interesting double bill. But yeah, cinema is a medium of limitations. It's the same as the theater, and they're biological limitations, and your audience should be mixed. Hopefully, if you want to do well with your film, there should be plenty of people in there. And I'm 49, and I don't have the bladder I used to. It's as simple as that. And when I went to see the first new Star Wars film, was it called The Force Awakens? And I went with my son, and I had to go to the loo at a critical. I don't know if it was a plot element, but it was a flashback and explain, and I missed it all. And it's just, when do you choose to go to the toilet? What will you miss? So I do prefer watching films at home these days, especially a lot of them try to be so long. But I give you a good one. He was saying there, was it Joseph? A film that I absolutely adore and have watched. Myself and my wife watched it, and we had to take it in over 3 nights, 1 hour a night. Hard to Be a God, the Alexei German film. Check that out. It's very, very. It's a long film. It's a full 3 hours, and it's something you really want to. If you know the book, I love the book. It's a Strugatsky brothers book. If you really, I've never seen a film like it. I'm blown away by it. It's in my top 10 movies now, and I've only watched it once, and I'm really looking forward to setting up the right environment to watch it again. But it certainly wouldn't be in a cinema. I'd miss so much, I think the last film I made it through without a urine break was Mad Max Fury Road. Oh dear. There's Jude McFerrin say, evening Doc, tuning in live from the 10 minutes late translink to North Coast. Excellent, Jude. How you doing? I hope you're keeping well. I haven't heard from you in a wee while. On the translink to the North Coast. Where are you coming from? I think you're heading back to Korea, isn't it? I think you're at, Jude. Yeah, thanks very much for joining us. Now from you're on the translink 10 minutes late. That's the train, yeah. Dear translink to North Coast. Well, I haven't been on the train in a while here. Right, sorry, I've done my ablutions and got me beer going there. So it's drinkable with not like 4 inches of froth. That's what you get when you get a good pills. So where were we? Give a few orders as possible. if you have to tell people to pack up their stuff in the morning, I suppose that's one thing. But it seems a bit of an odd thing. I wouldn't agree with that. I'm not a military person, but I understand the mind. I would be giving orders all the time to make sure things are done correctly. And we're told anyway, give as few orders as possible. We're told that the Fremen knew this rule instinctively. So I suppose you don't need to give people who are competent, orders, if you know what I mean. If they take the initiative, that must be the way these people are. So we're told that the troops' watermasters, here we go, begin the morning shanty, another shanty, adding to it now the call for the right to initiate a Sandrider. So we have rituals for everything, don't we? And I'm wondering about that. We're told about the Fremen being, about precision. The specialization that they have is that they're near perfection of their precision. This kind of thing in measuring water, the peril in finding ultimate perfection, patterns, fixity, etc. It's interesting that I think some of those comments refer to the Fremen too. And it's most likely their environment that's made them become like that, as well as, I suppose, other factors as well, like their religions. Now, we've got a really interesting thing here, I suppose. The beginning morning shanty and adding to it, so that the shanty to initiate a Sandrider. We're going to skip ahead a wee second here. Oh no, we'll come to it, but we'll just go ahead here. So we're told this is the chanting, and it is the world is a carcass. This guy chants, his voice wailing across the dunes. Who can turn away the angel of death? What Shai-hulud has decreed must be. And we're told that Paul, this is the wee bit I was going to jump forward to, Paul recognized these words because they also began the death chant of his Fedakim, the words his death commandos recited as they hurled themselves into battle. So I've put, therefore, I suppose it's utility of language, maybe. The ritual for youths, if you like, for adulthood, as I've put it here, for worm riding, for becoming a Sandrider, also as part of this song, for this death chant that's sung by death commandos when they go into battle. I thought that was kind of interesting. There's just saying, keeping well, Doc. Thanks for asking. Coming from Belfast for the Christmas do to indeed Korean trains running slow for the holidays. Yeah, I'd imagine. It's hard to think we're in December now, isn't it? This year's been an absolute cack of a year for me. But it's been moving so quickly and yet I don't know, slowly at the same time. Hope you get home safe, Jude. Or soon. Dear oh dear. So yeah, there's utility in their rituals. I think that they can words from one thing. The world is a carcass, by the way, is a phrase attributed to Jesus. Let me see. I'm trying to think, what was that? The world needs a landmine? I can't remember. Some old song. The world is a corpse. Jesus said, he who has known the world has found a corpse, and he who has found a corpse, the world is not worthy of him. It says that this is in the Gospel of Thomas. Why is that not going to go there? But anyway, who can turn away the angel of death? What Shai-hulud has decreed must be. And I think that's also an association with Shai-hulud and the angel of death as well. Possibly. Now, Paul's thoughts here are, will there be a rock shrine here this day to mark the passing of another soul? Will Fremen stop here in the future, each to add another stone and think on Muad'Dib, who died in this place? So is this going to be my death here? Are they going to, if I get snuffed out by this big worm, will they build a wee shrine here to me, just like I've built one for my father? He knew, we're told that this was among the alternatives today. So this is Paul's, I suppose, imperfect vision. It's not, there's possibilities here. a fact along lines of the future radiating from this position in time space. The imperfect vision plagued him. The more he resisted his terrible purpose and fought against the coming jihad, the greater turmoil that wove through his prescience. So the more he tries to fight against it, the more he tries to choose decisions that I don't want to do that, I don't want to cause this, the harder it is for him, the greater turmoil that weaves through his prescience. And of course, the jihad is connected to something else, isn't it? His entire future becoming like a river hurtling towards a chasm, the violent nexus beyond which all was fog and clouds. So the violent nexus, the jihad, beyond this that we've had that description again. Was it fog and clouds? Where did we have that previously? Beyond them both lay the clouded area, the great unrest, and of course, I think once we go, that's Kralazek that we're talking about, our typical kind of end of the world apocalyptic. And I always find them quite interesting, I think. And I think the one in Dune's a bit, we can discuss it at some point, actually. But so his entire future becoming like a river hurtling towards a chasm. And that kind of reminds us a little bit about religion and politics. The quotation, again, at the start of our chapter here. Oh, I didn't write it. Let me just go to the book here. It reminds us of that. Oh no, sorry, that's the wrong quotation, isn't it? It's the Bene Gesserit proverb. Apologies, it's not the quotation at the start of the book. It's Jessica, the proverb. When religion and politics travel in the same cart, the writers believe nothing can stand in the right, etc., etc. Faster and faster and faster, they put aside all thoughts of obstacles and forget that a precipice does not show itself for a man in a blind rush until it's too late. Give me the same sort of vibe as that there, I thought. Hurtling towards something out of control. So Chani says, Stilgar approaches. I must stand apart now, beloved. Now I must be Sayadina and observe the rite, that it may be reported truly in the chronicles. So we have some kind of written record of that the Fremen use. It's just called the Chronicles here. Yeah, and that's kind of interesting. I don't know if we know too much about it. I don't think we get any mention of the Fremen Chronicles in the back of the book. And I just thought, if that's the case, it's maybe just one of those throwaway terms within the book of another kind of literary form, or in this case, I suppose it could be an ecclesiastical record, couldn't it? No, I don't see anything. But yeah, I suppose it's interesting that why are we not quoted from these chronicles the odd time in Dune? I thought that's what anytime I see any kind of book or mention of authors, etc., I kind of wonder why they're not. And of course, Irulan's our only historian in this book. Pardon me. So yeah, I've got to be Sayadina now, not your beloved. Basically, I've got to step back, watch the rituals, the rites, so it can be reported truly. So she's a witness to this event. She looked up at him for a moment, her reserve slipped, and then she had herself under control. Chani is a badass, isn't she? When this is past, I shall prepare thy breakfast with mine own hands. And I thought, this is another meal, isn't it? She turns away. Right. So Stilgar approaches. This is all about, I suppose we've got legends and all sorts here. Goodness, there's an awful lot in this chapter. So we're told he moves towards him across the flower sand, stirring up little dust puddles. I like that. It's nice little details. The dark niches of his eyes, steady on Paul, his untamed stare. The black beard above his still-suit mask, lines of craggy cheeks, could have been wind-etched from the native rock for all their movement. get a similar description like that in a wee bit, don't we? Stilgar carried Paul's banner. This is interesting. On its staff, let me just see that. Hang on, have I written that down incorrectly? The man carried Paul's banner on its staff. Yeah, green and black banner with a water tube in the staff. Already, the staff was a legend in the land. And I thought that's interesting. So we're not just getting legends and myths, I suppose, about Paul, probably about Jessica, and probably also about little Alia. The mystery of the three of them, But even this is an object associated with Paul Atreides. It's a banner. It has a little water tube in it to indicate wealth, power, I suppose, from the point of view of the Fremen. And we're told it's already a legend in the land. Half pridefully, Paul thought, I cannot do the simplest thing without it becoming a legend. They will mark how I parted from Chani, how I greet Stilgar. Every move I make this day, live or die, it is a legend. I must not die. Then it will only be only legend and nothing to stop the jihad. So to stop the jihad, he has to live, I suppose, knowing that it will continue on with via Jessica through Alia, as we're told earlier. So staffs and staves and banners and stuff, very quickly, I just thought are quite interesting. I was trying to find what was the name of the banner of King Arthur, etc. It got me thinking about Roman standards. Let's see, Vexillums and Labarums, for example. So Vexillum's kind of a standard legion banner. Labarum's what would you call it? The one of Constantine. So it's Chi-Rho, Constantinian cross. Hang on. Rather than me doing all of this, just draw it. Well, comes in different forms, I suppose. There we go. That's what we're talking about there. Constantinian cross. Greek letters Chi-Rho representing Christ. Constantine, if anybody doesn't know the story, Constantine had to flee to Britain. To the British army, up to Britain, to the armies of his father, I believe, there at a certain point, and then basically took control of his father's army in Britain. And the legend goes that he had that army paint that symbol. That something came to him in a dream, and that he was to paint that symbol on his shields, and they would be victorious. And of course, a little bit of fighting in and around Rome with lots of different contenders for Roman emperor, and he wins. And so he's Constantine the First. And that symbol is that banner, for example, is associated with him, would be called the Labarum. So the Roman ones, I suppose you all probably know quite the famous standards of the legions, the Aquila, the eagle, and then there's also a dragon, the Draco for the GGs, the cavalry. trying to remember what you call the cavalry there. Again, other staffs, for example, Paul and Stilgar. Here, very much, you get Moses and Aaron vibe off them, particularly with this staff. So that's kind of what I was thinking. I was just trying to think of all these various different staffs and standards from myths and history, etc. Came up with, and then anytime I think of staffs, there's the greatest one of all. I don't care if it's Paul Atreides or not. Is the Ruyi Jing Guban, and I'll type that out for you in English. And if anybody doesn't know what this is also known as the magic wishing staff, isn't it? Of I don't know, isn't it extended the length of the entire year? Yeah, that is the weapon of the Monkey King, and is my personal favorite staff or stave, if you like. But yeah, I thought some of this stuff here just was very reminiscent of Moses and Aaron from the Bible. But I can't do anything that won't become a legend, and I must not die. Then it will only be legend and nothing to stop the jihad. So if I die here, I'm just a legend. This jihad will happen. I must stay alive. So Stilgar, we're told, planted the staff in the sand beside Paul and dropped his hands to his sides. The blue within blue eyes level and intent. And Paul thought about his own eyes already assuming the mask of colour from the spice. And of course, we've been told that the blue's overlaying the green of Jessica's eyes as well. Stilgar says they denied us the Hajj with ritual solemnity. And as Chani had taught him, we're told, Paul responds, all part of the ritual, who can deny a Fremen the right to walk or ride where he wills? Stilgar says, I am a naib, never to be taken alive. I am a leg of the death tripod that will destroy our foes. Silence settled over them. So, the death tripod, if you like. Again, this is a thing. Herbert looks at, what is it? He describes the tripod as the weakest of political structures. And I think in particular that he's referring to American, the United States of America's governmental system there. I don't know. Tripod, I think it's the wrong term. It's a triskelion, 3 legs, if you like. Tripod, 3 feet. He says, I am a leg of the death tripod of the 3 feet. So that's me being picky about words, isn't it? Tripartite systems are unstable. I do agree. Well, the idea is that 2 are meant to counterbalance the other one, isn't it? That out of the 3, no one can take true power. But it doesn't make sense. It's not a good idea, really. United States, Nazi Germany, Soviet Union. I suppose even with here we have House of Commons, House of Lords, which are unelected, and then we have, I suppose, the royal family as well. So we have a monarchy, and although they're not supposed to have power, of course they do. And I think you've seen our very weak new Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, isn't it? I think they call him. I know nothing about him much, but rather than acting on the current environmental meetings that are going on, etc., he wasn't very keen, and so new King Charles steps in and hosts a party for everybody. That's the way they put it. That's actually him conducting politics. But within, for example, the monarchy, the other 2 feet of their tripod is, I suppose one of them's the army, isn't it, and the other one's the church. It's interesting. Yeah. I think the more feet you have, the better something can stand, I suppose. It's interesting. A lot of people sort of talking about the way democracy is going in America at the minute, and I'd argue what you have has never been a proper democracy. In fact, I don't live in one either, and generally what people like to describe as democracies are not. Millipede means 1,000 feet, doesn't it? Yeah, absolutely. I love millipedes. Yeah, why stop? I don't know why pick one person to rule your country. I always thought the United States motto was the wrong way around. Was it e pluribus unum? Was it out of many one? It should be out of one many. If that makes sense, it makes perfect sense to me. So no, but you don't really need to change the motto of the United States. Just rephrase it. I think it'll be a lot better. One country with lots of people running it rather than lots of people electing one person to make an absolute mess of things. One person can't represent an entire population. There'll always be some one country, But I like the idea of isonomic government. I think that's everybody, government for everyone, by everyone. And that kind of, and you don't, if you can set it up that factions don't evolve in it, then very good, Oh goodness, death tripod. It's one of those things that Herbert talks about as the least stable of political structures. I don't think sometimes Herbert says some things that sound quite impressive, but they don't. Sometimes they don't quite add up actually in reality, and I think that's part of this in Dune, that we're often presented with wisdom from above, and we have to question almost everything we read in this book. So this is a moment of personal prayer, we're told. Silence settled over them. It's a moment of personal prayer, is what I've written in, actually. Sorry, and we're told Paul glanced at the other Fremen scattered about the sand, the way they stood without moving. For this, oh, sorry, there it is, for this moment of personal prayer. And he thought of how the Fremen were a people whose living consisted of killing. An entire people who'd lived with rage and grief all of their days, never once considering what might what might take their place of either. Sorry, that's my bad handwriting failing me again. That's a K, Russell. There we go. Cross your T's. And then we get, except for a dream that late kinds infused them with before his death. Now that's appalling, isn't it? If you understand this, I live in a culture that's Pilocracy, government by pillow. Very good. But I live in a country where we've been killing each other for a long time, mainly spurred by the English over here slaughtering people, and then it's there would be no terrorist organizations in this country if it wasn't for the massacres committed by the British Army and the British government. And it used religion to manipulate the people into two separate communities and have them at each other's throat. So I live in a society where death is fundamental, and killing is a thing, and being a murderer is a thing to be proud of. And a murder sentence, by the way, in Northern Ireland is 15 years. So life is cheap in this country. I imagine, I think most countries it's like 25 to life or something like that. Some countries would let you out, but yeah, you can commit murder in this country and be out pretty quick. It's also one of our problems is we haven't, the Good Friday Agreement has let an awful lot of murderers out of prison. They know about the euphemism in this country. I'm going to do this one day, by the way. I'm going to do Doc Sloan's Guide to Northern Irish Language, and one of them is community worker, terrorist. If you see what I mean. It's a good one. As Jude said, thinking about it, Herbert is talking about how three legs are unstable, and Paul's Sietch name is Usul, the base of the pillar, a one-legged structure. Yes. Very good, Jude. Indeed. And I was going to get to walking on two legs, and you know what? It even got me thinking about the riddle of the Sphinx. So no, the solid base of the pillar. Yeah. So that's a single ruler. Is that less stable than now? I suppose in terms of tripods, the ones that I'm really being stupid and so stupid about ignoring are, of course, the first and second triumvirates within Roman society. So the first triumvirate is part of the Roman Republic. Well, I suppose both of them are end up with pretty much Augustus on the throne and the creation of the first emperor. But within the triumvirate, if you like, the first triumvirate is Pompey, Julius Caesar, and is it Lepidus? Two of those men are powerful. Two of them very powerful. The other one's the money, I think, if I can remember it correctly. There we go. So, and I actually was talking about, I thought there was an informal triumvirate within British politics at the minute. And you have to understand that a triumvirate, the three people operate in three different spheres, if you see what I mean. But they're working together. It's not a formal magistracy, as it says here. Julius Caesar, Ennius Pompeius Magnus, and Crassus, sorry. Marcus Licinius Crassus. Am I thinking on the second triumvirate? Crassus, first triumvirate. I said, who did I say? I said Lepidus, didn't I? Let me see. There's one for my brain. Let's go to the second triumvirate. Yes, there we go. That's okay. I haven't gone completely bonkers. I'm just mixing up my triumvirates. So the first triumvirate is Pompey, Caesar, and Crassus. I should have known that because I tried to put in their other names. And the second triumvirate is Mark Antony, Lepidus, and Octavian. And Octavian is the other name for Augustus. This is proper name. So these in particular, and how these alliances, if you like, very interesting. Of course, so you'd have Pompey at home. Caesar, yeah, Crassus is the money, isn't he? And if you look at this, I suppose it's once one topples one, Crassus, personal enemy of Pompey, blah blah blah, etc. Yeah, it ends up with a pretty much civil war, and Caesar and Pompey comes to quite an ignoble end. It's it's class talk. I've murdered loads of people. Not at all. Okay, it's generalizations, but I just think it's such a part of our culture, dude. It's everywhere. You can't look. It's death rather than killing and stuff. But I certainly know plenty of people who've been killed, etc. etc. It's. But I'm old, so I think it's a different. I'm hoping it's a different generation. But I think Lyra McKee proves otherwise. To be honest with you. But yeah, there's, believe it or not, Jude. I don't know if you've got as far through the Dune series, but whenever we get to God Emperor, you can the God Emperor's got a lot about Ireland and Northern Ireland in it, and he published it pretty much back to back with another book called The White Plague. So there's a fair amount about Northern Ireland and Ireland in these books. I keep pointing out all the red hand symbology and stuff. The hand. There's quite a bit, but it's sad to say that what is a society? That's my point. I suppose I drifted off a bit there. Thought of how the Fremen were a people whose living consisted of killing. It doesn't give us a big list of other things there. It's just killing. It's not that they enjoy cinema. They're fond of picnics. They like taking their worms for a midnight ride. This kind of thing. Just killing. An entire people who'd lived with rage and grief all their days, and of course they've been on the run, if you like, through planet to planet to planet, never once considering what might take the place of either, except for the dream that Leto Kynes infused with him before his death. That's what we need here, Jude, is a different dream, isn't it? Something to unify people and get them to work towards something. It's not death. But you see, that's Christianity to me is a death cult in this country, very much so. Oh. Now, excuse me while I adjust my chair, folks. Oh, no, I think this chair's actually gone bad. Spend that much time in it. So, Stilgar, back to the ritual, I suppose. Stilgar says, "Where is the Lord who led us through the land of desert and of pits?" And the Fremen, again, sort of letting in response, he is ever with us, they respond. And that's our ritual over. What Stilgar says there, "Where is the Lord who led us through the land of desert and of pits?" That's nod to Jeremiah 2:6. Where is the Lord who brought us up out of Egypt and led us through the barren wilderness? It's interesting that the Fremen are very much within the quotations that we've had here. They're what we would call OC Bible, aren't they? They would be OC Bible quotations, I think. So here comes Stilgar's advice to Paul. He moves closer, lowers his voice. "Now, remember what I told you. Do it simply and directly. Nothing fancy. Among our people, we ride the Maker at the age of 12. You are more than 6 years beyond that age." So Paul's at least 19 now, according to that, I think. "And not born to this life. You're not used to riding worms. You don't have to impress anyone with your courage. We know you're brave. All you must do is call the Maker and ride him." "I will remember," says Paul. "See that you do. I'll not have you shame my teaching." I thought there was something. Yeah, I think there's something contradictory in a wee minute to that statement. You don't have to do anything impressive. Just keep it simple and direct. We'll see in a wee minute here. I think what Stilgar says is no, is the opposite of that. Go ahead. I'm not too sure, but I thought it was quite funny. So And again, maybe this bit did make me laugh. This is a wee bit of Herbert's writing that I would have tidied up myself, but let's just have a look at it. Rather than let my notes do it injustice. Stilgar pulled a plastic rod about a meter long from beneath his robe. The thing was pointed at one end and had a spring-wound clapper. Sorry, just my sense of humor. At the other end, couldn't help myself. It was all very innuendous, isn't it? I think I prepared this thumper myself. It's a good one. Take it. And Paul felt the warm smoothness of the plastic as he accepted the thumper. There's something quite dodgy about Frank Herbert's writing there, and that just has homoerotic literature written all over. And I don't, maybe that's just my very dark mind. Not that there's anything dark about it, but it seems that little, like a Spirk and Cock moment, if you know what I mean. That's Kirk and Spock, by the way. Oh, they're just saying, yeah, we're the only UK nation where owning a gun for defence is a valid clause. Currently close to the end of Children of Dune. Ah, excellent. Whenever you hit the God Emperor, Jude, it's a different animal, and it's what ultimately happens to the Fremen. If you they become museum Fremen, and you'll see Northern Ireland's culture very much and who they are and what they do, what they are, if you see what I mean, and what they were. How can we unify them when the mums are plotting against us? So I will stop chat spamming and derailing now. No worries, Jude. I'm glad your train's got in. Yeah, 10:30, 11:30. That's pretty late, isn't it? Not chat spamming at all. No worries. Nice to hear from you again. That's right. I do enough wandering off topic myself, you know. So, yes, I prepare. I don't know. I just thought that was funny. I'm sorry. I would have written that differently to make the yeah. I just thought it was I enjoyed reading that. I thought just Frank, what are you at here? It was very funny. So after he felt the warm smoothness of plastic as he accepted the thing, we're told Stilgar says that Shishakli has your hooks. He'll hand them to you as you step out onto that dune over there and point it to his right. Call a big maker, Uzel. Show us the way. There we go. That's the wee bit I thought. As Stilgar says, make it a big one. You know, it's whereas before, you don't have to be showy or anything, but and maybe it's nothing to do with show or bravura, but what size of a maker comes. But there's an awful lot of sort of phallic imagery there, and I just thought it was quite funny. Now we're told Shishakli is a common surname. Let me see. No, it comes from the word shishak, which means flower, and a shishakli is someone or someplace with flowers. Now I think it's a Turkish name, by the way. But also to point out that Shishakli here is the guy that's going to give Paul his maker hooks, and is let me see, is one of the squad. Is one of his Feda King, one of the squad leaders. So there's also I suppose the other Shishakli that's quite famous is Adib al-Shishakli, who was the Syrian president from 1953 to 54. So just in relation to that name, it's timely in terms of where parts of the world that Frank's looking at. Someone or someplace with flowers, and I suppose he's a bit of a have a wee look at him. Adib al-Shishakli, Syrian president from 1953 to 54. It's the only instance I could find of this name, but apparently it is a common surname, and it comes from the word shishak, which means flower, and Shishakli, if I'm pronouncing them correctly, someone or someplace with flowers, which sounds quite nice. So there we go. So Paul noted the tone of Stilgar's voice, half ritual, half worried friend. And at this point, we have sunrise. And if you think about the tension that's been building and the way that this would be, this is all going, da-da, there's the sun. And again, we do have this kind of inversion of day and night for the Fremen here. We're not they're nighttime people. This is going to be in the heat, as we're told. So that instant, the sun seemed to bound above the horizon. The sky took on a silver grey blue that warned this day would be a day of extreme heat and dryness, even for Arrakis. And Stilgar's voice calling out here says, "It is the time of the scalding day." And now we're told his voice was entirely ritual. "Go, Usul, and ride the Maker. Travel the sand as a leader of men." And Paul salutes his banner, noting how the green and black flag hung limply, now downwind. Now the downwind had died. There's enough. I just think there's far too many, phallic references within this chapter. It's a weird one. Some of this writing, I think. So his flag is hanging limply, and he turns towards the dune, the dirty tan slope with an S-track crest, and already the troop are moving in the opposite direction, climbing the other dune that sheltered the camp. So Shishakli, we're told, is the one robed figure who remained in Paul's path. He's the squad leader of the Feda King, and we're told only his slope-lidded eyes were visible between the still-suit cap and his mask. Shishakli presents two thin whip-like shafts as Paul approached. They're 1.5 meters long, glistening plasteel hooks at one end, roughened at the other end for firm grip. If we remember all the way back, it was always they were kind of curious. Paul was curious about these hooks that they never quite figured out what they were for. So we're told that he accepted both in the left hand as required by a ritual. And Shishakli says, "They are my own hooks. They have never failed," in his husky voice. So I suppose this is people giving him the bits and pieces that he needs to achieve this help from soldiers and Fremen. So we're told he nodded and maintained the necessary silence. So this is all still ritual. Moved past the man, up the dune slope. At the crest, he glanced back and saw the troops scattering like a flight of insects, their robes fluttering. He stood alone now on a sandy ridge, only a horizon in front, flat, unmoving horizon. This was a good dune that Stilgar had chosen, higher than the others for a viewpoint advantage. So we're told that Paul stooped, planted the thumper deep into the windward face, where the sand was compacted. This is a little bit of Fremen know-how, isn't it? It's to give maximum transmission, we're told, to the drumming, to really just maximize the use of the thumper. Of course, we had, was it flour sand, nice and soft for camping? Excuse me. So he hesitated. He's reviewing the lessons, reviewing the life and death necessities that faced him. So, when he threw the latch, the thumper would begin its summons. Across the sand, a giant worm, a maker, would hear it and come to the drumming. With the whip-like hook staffs, Paul knew he could mount the maker's high curving back as long as the forward edge of a worm's ring segment was held open by a hook. So this is how we ride worms, basically. I just highlight that bit there. So, so he can mount the maker's high curving back as long as the forward edge of the worm's ring segment was held open by a hook, and it's open to admit the abrasive sand into the sensitive interior. So they basically get this hook in, opens up this, the hook staffs as they're called here, opens up we've seen this in a couple of the films, I'm sure, opens up part of the skin of the worm to the sand that gets in, and it causes irritation, and it makes it keep that part of its body as far away from the sand as possible. So we're told that the creature would not retreat beneath the desert or roll its body to bring the open segment as far. It would roll its body, to bring the open segment as far away from the desert surface as possible. And Paul says to himself, "I am a Sandrider." He glanced at the hooks in his left hand, thinking he'd only two He'd only to shift the hooks down the curve of the Maker's immense side to make the creature roll in turn, guiding it where he will. So we're basically getting a lesson here on how to drive a worm. And Paul tells us he's seen it done before, that we've been helped up the side of a worm for a short ride in training. The captive worm they'd ridden until the captive worm had been ridden until it lay exhausted and quiescent upon the desert surface, and a new maker must be summoned. So you can ride a worm to the point of it getting knackered, basically, at which point it'll just go and lie there. Which I thought was quite interesting. Okay. So Paul's thoughts are this: once past this test, he'd be qualified to make the 20 thumper journey. So this is like his driving test for a young man, I suppose. He'd be qualified. He gets a license somehow. I suppose the qualification is that all the other Fremen have seen him do it and know that he can do it. So this would allow him to make the 20 thumper journey into the Southland, to rest and restore himself into the south where the women and families had been hidden from the pogrom among the new Palmaries and Sietch warrens. So this pogrom's still going on here. Stilgar words he remembered. Oh, sorry, hang on. I've done one of those. I've written my notes the wrong way around, so I'm going to jump ahead. He lifted his head and looked to the south and reminded himself that the Maker summoned wild from the Urg was an unknown quantity, and that the one who summoned it, in other words, him, was equally unknown to the test. So there are unknowns here, and this is why his prescient vision isn't going to be able to help him in this nexus point. And so in terms of it's difficult to have here's the universe's super being as your main character and show him in peril. And Herbert, it's the little nexus points, the gaps where Paul can't see, that actually brings the heroic nature of his character into good focus, I suppose. That it's not all just I'm super amazing, I can foresee everything. He has weaknesses and flaws just like us, though his other abilities are greatly amplified, aren't they? So in an abrupt decision, he released the thumper's latch, the clapper began revolving, and the summons drummed through the sand. A measured lump, lump, lump. We've got a lot of tension building here too. That's part of it. He straightened, scanning the horizon, remembering Stilgar's word. No, here, hang on. I've jumped forward anyway. Sorry, I missed Stilgar's words, other that he remembered. I'll just go back to them. He said, "You must gauge the approaching Maker carefully. You must stand close enough that you can mount on it as it passes you, not so close that it engulfs you." Sorry, I'd mixed up my notes there. Jump back and then forward, folks. I'll give you a little sense of what it's like to be future memory as well, from my point of view. Then we had the lump, lump, lump. I do apologize. And then this set of Stilgar's words, which is judge the line of approach carefully. Remember, a worm seldom makes an unseen approach to a thumper. Listen all the same. You may often hear it before you see it. So it seldom makes an unseen approach. That doesn't mean it won't happen. But rather than looking for it, have a listen. You'll probably hear it before you see it. We also get Chani's words of caution here. Whispered at night, we're told, when fear overcame her and filled his mind. When you take your stand along the Maker's path, you must remain utterly still. You must think like a patch of sand. Hide beneath your cloak and become a little Dune in your very essence. So that's kind of don't move, I suppose, when the worm's coming, because you'll make a noise. But consider yourself like a small patch of sand. Pardon me. So slowly he scanned the horizon, listening, watching for the signs that he'd been taught. I think this is great. The tension really has been building up here. And it's just, here we go. I think that particularly that's what Herbert does really well here, is he's going to give us another good cliffhanger, isn't he? It came from the southeast, distant hissing, a sand whisper. This is the Maker. Presently, he saw faraway outline of the creature's track against the dawn light and realized he had never before seen a Maker this large, Never heard of one this size. More than half a league long, the rise of the sand wave at its cresting head. Sorry. So Stilgar are saying, don't do anything fancy, make it a big one. And then here we go. This isn't just any worm, it's the biggest worm that he's ever seen. But not only that, it's the biggest one that he's ever heard of. And I'm sure there've been a bit of chat within the Sietches about different worms and stuff. More than half a league long. Well, that's interesting. Depends on what we mean by a league. A Roman league, for example, is about 1.5 miles. A British league is 3 miles. So we're talking, if it's a Roman league, we're talking 750 meters long. And if it's a British league, UK league, imperial measurement, that's 3 miles. Half of that would make the worm 1.5 miles long. So it's an interesting one, you know. Lump more phallic imagery. Yeah, why not? Yeah, it just went phallic pretty quick, didn't it? And then it changed, but it was a Stilgar pulling his rod out from under his robe, and what is it? Pointed at one end, a big spring. I prepared it myself. It's a good one. Take it. And then Paul felt the warm smoothness of it as he accepted this. It is. I'm sorry. Jude, wait till we get to a proper sex scene. There'll be enormous fun whenever we get to how Frank writes sex scenes. He's not good at it. Purple sausages and also it's quite bizarre. You would actually think it's a completely different writer. Well, I tend to. I wonder who he got to write them. Dear, oh dear. So yeah, that's a pretty big worm. We're told it was like the approach of a mountain. There we go. And Paul, we are on the last page actually. I'm ready for my notes. Paul's thoughts here. This is nothing I have seen by vision or in life. It's a complete unknown. He cautions himself here. He hurried across the path of the thing to take his stand, caught up entirely by the rushing needs of this moment. I'm like, oh, for goodness sake, that's a good cliffhanger. So all of this about riding the worm, will we get to see it? No, it's and what about, there we are, folks. That's us at the end of chapter 40. Goodness gracious, that one takes us all over the place. And it's an awful lot to absorb, isn't it? And it's even messing with us right at the very beginning. Is this real? Has this happened? As I said, it gives us a really good sense. It really does put us in Paul's shoes a little bit. It gives us a wee bit of understanding of what it must be like for him. I've had a couple of occasions where I've had dreams that I wasn't sure if they were reality or not. Because I was dreaming about something that had happened and I couldn't beef swallow. That was it. Purple-headed love monster and the quivering love pudding. That's where you can go with that kind of stuff, Jude. But there we go, folks. I don't know if you've got any wee questions or comments about this chapter. Fire away. In terms of people dying, we've only got one person mentioned off stage, if you like, which is the Fremen challenger that Chani dispatches. Though there are probably a few other. That's Fremen on Fremen violence, by the way. Not that it's not something that's outside of their purview, if you like. But goodness, we've gone all of these things. Is this a dream? The visual fatigue. Is Leto II born? Yes. Is Alia born? Yes. But did I bury my father's skull at the shrine? Yeah, I did that. I've got scars. Did Chani kill someone in mine? Yeah, that happened too. All of this doubt, and of course there's a strategy behind that. The discussion with about religion with Jessica, religion and politics, and then the other discussion, I suppose, about Alia. And do you think I'm unnatural and how this distressed him? All of this. And I suppose it's mentioned a couple of times within this. This is all within the background of the Sardaukar pogroms that are going on. That we've also been mentioned that I suppose none of the people then we keep mentioning have been seen in this chapter. They're talked about, but we haven't met Alia yet. We haven't met Leto II yet. And as we're pointing out to some people, if they're not too sure, the Leto II in this book in Dune is not Leto II from the God. He's not the God Emperor. So technically, the God Emperor is Leto III. And my understanding is that he takes the title Leto II because this Leto II didn't rule. I think that's what I would go with. We've got the Feda King here. With the mention of Gurney Halleck again, and etc. And all of this occurs within a dream. And that takes us well into this chapter. And then basically, we get to see a lot of the ritual, a little bit of a discussion of Sietch life and of what it's like for Alia. And from that point on, I suppose, then we build it up with ritual, with mystery, religious quotations, talk about mythology, rites and chronicles. We've got the legendary nature of objects that are attributed to Paul, his banner, for example. And we have this discussion of the death tripod. I'm assuming that he's a naib that's with a Reverend Mother and possibly Paul. Is that the tripod there? Religion, military leaders, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what is the Roman, or not the Roman, sorry, the Fremen tripod. And then, of course, a bit about advice on how to ride a worm, etc. Oh, we have so much here. And we're introduced to a couple of new characters, death commandos, whose chant when they go into battle happens to be the same as "I want to go riding a sandworm today," that kind of thing, And it leaves us just with him. Here comes the worm. What a cliffhanger! And I love cliffhangers, and a really good part of storytelling. We're going to get a bit of a switch over to Jessica's point of view for the next chapter, and of course, then we'll get the resolution of that in the following chapter. So there we go, chapter 40. Loads of stuff in it, and of course, I suppose we kind of find out it's a little mystery. If we go all the way back, Paul's not sure what these hooks are for. The maker hooks. There's also something contradictory here, is that we're told that the Fremen look after their sick and wounded. Summon up a worm, stick a palanquin on it, and off they go. Take them to a nice Sietch in the south where they can chill out, look after themselves, heal their wounds. And it's a suggestion that Paul's ready to go there after this worm ride to heal himself, to rest and recuperate. So there we go. And plenty of phallic imagery. I said, yeah, it is all a wee bit, that bit with the staff. It's a wee bit. Oh, what's going on here? I thought it was for I don't know. I thought it was very funny, and I hope it's not just me that sees that. That would be weird. So there we go, folks. It's just coming up to midnight here, the witching hour. And as I said, I'm off for a wee break this week, so I'll not be here this Thursday coming, but off for a long, much deserved rest and break, and a bit of a chill out. And I'm worrying about it because I have to leave my doggies behind, and I'm a bit. But I'm looking forward to it. There you go, cliffhanger. I'm trying to figure. I'm not very good at drawing, so I'm trying to figure out a wee way of drawing the worms. I'm very much a doodler, but I quite like the way that one turned up there. You can see it. There we go. Hang on. So yeah, so plenty of things to do, I suppose, with this. But we're really heading towards the end now. Our next chapter is chapter 41. I think we have 48 in total, and then the appendices. Sorry. 48, big chapter to the end. Oh wow, the last chapter. That's going to be a big night, isn't it? When we hit the last chapter, and of course we'll do an episode on Appendix 1, which is a mini adventure for Harlow Kinds, another little short story, and then we'll take a look at the other appendices together probably. I don't think the terminology needs much looking at, but the report on Bene Gesserit motives and purposes will definitely be worth a look. And the religion of Dune. I don't know. I think Dune is an anti-religious book. It's also, I'd say, it's an anti-war book as well. Which is still, it's interesting the way that a lot of the films turn into an action movie, I suppose. But a bit of it looks more like a war film than it ever should, I suppose. But there we go, folks. So listen, how did we do tonight? That's not too bad for a chapter of that length. As I said, it's nearly 3 hours at it. So it's sometimes the slightly larger chapters we can move through easier because there's I suppose it's when they're dialogue heavy we go through them very quickly. But there's an awful lot to chat about there, and it's reinforcing a few some characters, introducing a couple of new things as always, and we're going to hopefully get to see Paul ride this worm. I suppose it's one of the things that a lot of people want to see in the movie, isn't it? The worm riders, Sandriders, this kind of thing. I was mucking about with this notebook. I don't think I've done a good design. I'll have to muck around with it a wee bit. But there you go, folks. Well, listen, thank you very much for joining me. And I said apologies for last week. I was really not too well. Yeah, just feeling a bit rough, I'm afraid. I didn't really want to risk doing this with such a stomach, I suppose, the German Dirkfallen, as they call it, isn't it? So listen, thank you very much, everybody, for your comments tonight. I'm wondering if I missed a few, actually, but just having a wee look. As Joseph was saying that the White Plague was scary. It gave me a lot of ideas, Joseph. But there we go. Well, listen, folks, thank you very much for joining me. We've not got too many. I'll be away next week and then back again the following week. So our next episode for the book club will be on the 15th of December, which I look forward to. And then hopefully there'll be no more breaks. We'll just pile on towards the end, and it'll probably just take us into the new year to get finished, which I'm looking forward to. And then I'm hopefully getting a wee bit of a break from the Dune book club. We'll start prepping maybe Dune Messiah, but I'm looking forward to getting back to making a few videos and doing a bit of writing, get some things up on the station and try and build it up a wee bit. So there we go, folks. So I'll say, listen, no matter where you are, look after yourselves, take care of yourselves in this crazy world, and I will say all the very best and good night. Thank you very much for joining us. See you next time, folks. Take care now. Bye-bye. Ooh, we flag.